A young woman was on a plane when she suddenly fainted. However, there were no medical personnel or doctors on board. The flight attendants had no choice but to broadcast a call for help, asking if there were any doctors among the passengers to assist. At this moment, a young man pretended not to hear anything and put on his headphones, but his best friend sitting next to him took off his headphones and urged him to help the girl. Left with no choice, the young man went to the cabin to assess the patient's condition. He measured her blood pressure and listened to her heartbeat, then quickly concluded that she was experiencing respiratory failure caused by a cardiac issue. However, when the young woman's relative arrived, the man was utterly shocked. He hadn't expected the relative to be his first love, whom he had once loved deeply. After asking about the relationship between his first love and the unconscious girl, he was devastated to learn that the girl was the daughter of his first love and her new husband. It turned out that his first love was a materialistic woman. To live a life of wealth and luxury, she had no qualms about marrying an old man who had a daughter the same age as her. The reason the man felt such deep sorrow and despair was because he had once taken the blame for his first love's crime and served 5 years in prison. Yet his sincerity and sacrifice were repaid with betrayal. Years ago, one late night, Maru received a desperate call for help from his girlfriend. Without hesitation, he left his younger sister, who was burning with a high fever, and rushed to the location she mentioned. Upon arriving, he discovered that his girlfriend, Jae-hee, had accidentally killed someone. Being a doctor, Maru immediately realized that the victim had been struck on the head with a hard object and had died from excessive blood loss. Maru urged Jae-hee to turn herself in, but she refused. She was willing to end her own life with a broken glass shard rather than sacrifice her career as a television reporter. Not wanting the woman he loved to suffer, Maru kissed Jae-hee deeply, then made the ultimate sacrifice. He abandoned his bright future, giving up his talent and the promising career of a doctor to take the blame for her crime. Jae-hee was deeply moved, yet she still fled when someone else was willing to take the fall for her. She went to meet an older man, handed him a folder of documents, and crying, told him she didn't need to explain. He would understand what had happened, wouldn't he? Chairman Nam said nothing, only gently embracing Jae-hee. Perhaps it was because this document had pushed Jae-hee to commit murder. At that moment, Maru had reached the window and watched the police cars rushing towards them. He calmly called his sister, bidding her a final farewell. 5 years had quickly passed. Maru had spent 5 years in prison, and when he was released, he had become a wealthy young man, spending each day loving a girl, only to abandon her the next. No matter how much the girl chased him, begging him, he coldly brushed her off. For Maru, his first love, Jae-hee, always left a deep impression in his heart. The other girls were either here or not, it didn't matter. On the other hand, after escaping punishment, Jae-hee had become the wife of Chairman Nam. The promise to wait and repay Maru had long been forgotten by her. Meanwhile, Chairman Nam's daughter, Eun-gi, the owner of a famous cosmetics company, was a bold and decisive person. Despite being a woman, her spirit was stronger than that of many men. When a customer complained of an allergic reaction to one of her company's products, Eun-gi personally went to apologize, bowing deeply. She then invited the customer to a meal, offering food made from her own cosmetics. Upon discovering that she had eaten the cosmetics, the customer was horrified. At that point, Eun-gi revealed that the woman was not Japanese, but Korean, hired by a competitor, LK Company, to sabotage Eun-gi's products. Her companion, Lawyer Park, also presented evidence showing that the woman had received a suspicious payment of 3 million won just last week, causing the woman to be too embarrassed to defend herself. Eun-gi returned home, the pain in her chest torturing her again. Her health wasn't very good, and Jae-hee was her stepmother. Jae-hee pretended to care for her husband's daughter, which disgusted Eun-gi greatly. Since Jae-hee had given birth to a son for her father, Eun-gi couldn't just throw her out of the house. Back to Maru, he wasn't really a wealthy young man. He had gotten involved with that girl, only to take revenge on her for tricking his best friend and stripping him of all his assets. After just 2 days, Maru had successfully reclaimed his friend's bank cards. Following this incident, they both flew back to Seoul. On the plane, Maru accidentally met Eun-gi, who was also on a business trip. However, due to her poor health, she fainted and collapsed onto Maru's shoulder. Maru didn't want to interfere, but there was no medical staff or doctor on the plane, so they made an announcement asking if any passengers were doctors. Maru, ignoring the situation and wearing his headphones, was urged by Jae-gil to take action and help. With no other option, Maru went to the cabin to check on the patient. He took her blood pressure, listened to her heartbeat, and suspected that she was suffering from respiratory failure due to a heart problem. When Eun-gi's relatives appeared, Maru was taken aback. He didn't expect it to be his first love, the one he had sacrificed so much for. Maru asked about the relationship between Jae-hee and the girl, only to be stunned when he learned that this was Jae-hee's stepdaughter. So, she left him to marry an old man with a child her own age? Now, there was even a 3-year-old son. Maru momentarily lost his composure. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved had betrayed him like this. When the flight attendant called his attention, he regained his calm and immediately rushed to help Eun-gi. After 2 injections into her heart, Maru concluded that the girl had sustained lung damage and broken ribs. Seeing the blood spilling out, Jae-hee, anxious and distrustful, tried to stop him, but Maru's eyes, filled with hatred, continued to work. Jae-hee screamed that he wasn't a doctor. Maru, who had given up his future and taken the blame for her, felt deeply heartbroken hearing her words. efforts. Eunji began to breathe again, so Maru left. One woman was willing to give up love for money, while another had sacrificed her future and career for love. Outside, Maru's heart ached, making it hard for him to breathe. Even after the plane had landed, he couldn't escape the painful memories. Back then, he and Jae-hee grew up in the same neighborhood, attended college together to pursue their dreams. She wanted to be a journalist, while he wanted to be a doctor and save lives. They had once been a perfect couple, and the love they had back then was so pure, but now it had turned into a deep wound. Meanwhile, after being saved, Yoongi was rushed to the hospital, yet she remained focused on her work. When Lawyer Park visited, he sighed at how stubborn she was. Yoongi scolded him, telling him he should be working too, and that he should feel ashamed for receiving a salary without earning it. Then, she turned to scold Maru after discovering that he wasn't a real doctor, but still had the audacity to stab needles into her chest. Eunji also heard that the stepmother she despised was somehow connected to Maru. Shortly afterward, she received a call from a subordinate with shocking news. Her stepmother had secretly withdrawn 1 billion won from the bank and was going to meet someone, leaving Eungi stunned. Indeed, Jae-hee had withdrawn 1 billion and brought fruits to the old house of Maru. She wanted to make it up to him in this way, but only Jae-gil was home. Maru was taking his sister, Choco, to the hospital. Choco was still weak, but back in the day, she had been angry with her brother for leaving her because of Jae-hee. At that moment, Jae-gil was telling Jae-hee how terrible she had been. Maru lost his family and was left with only his sister, but he had neglected her for Jae-hee. Now that he was out of prison, no one would hire him, no matter how skilled he was. Jae-hee listened, feeling guilty, but was even more surprised when Maru refused to move. It was because he was afraid she wouldn't be able to find him again. Now, she realized how thoughtless she had been toward Maru. Overcome with shame, Jae-hee couldn't stay any longer. When Maru returned home, she had already left, and Jae-gil handed him the 1 billion won she had brought. Maru was deeply offended, feeling that this was the ultimate insult to him. Furious, he grabbed the money and ran after Jae-hee to return it, but she was nowhere to be found. That evening, as Jae-hee stepped into the house, she found Eungi waiting for her. Eungi immediately confronted her, demanding to know why she had given 1 billion won to that guy who isn't even a real doctor. Jae-hee was startled by the question, realizing how fearsome her stepdaughter was, always managing to uncover everything. However, Jae-hee was not one to be easily intimidated. She turned the tables by using Maru as a threat against Eungi. Jae-hee told Eungi that Maru knew about the incident from 7 years ago when Eungi was caught possessing drugs and was exiled overseas. If Maru revealed this to the company's shareholders, Eungi would lose her right to inherit the company, and all her hard work would go to waste. Jae-hee claimed that this was the reason she gave the 1 billion won to keep Maru silent about the matter. Eungi was infuriated upon hearing this and vowed not to let Jae-hee get away with it. The next day, Eungi told Jae-hee that she had reported Maru to the police for blackmail and extortion. She added that Jae-hee should prepare herself to visit him in jail, leaving Jae-hee utterly stunned. Not long after, when Maru returned home, his sister Choco ran to him in tears, terrified that he would be taken away again. Still confused, Maru tried to calm her down, but before he could make sense of the situation, 2 police officers arrived and arrested him on charges of blackmail and extortion. When Maru asked who had filed the report, the officers revealed the name, Jae-hee. Maru's heart ached deeply as his gaze grew cold, mixed with resentment. Choco, terrified, chased after the police, pleading with them not to take her brother away. This only fueled Maru's hatred for the cruel fate he had been dealt. When Jae-hee heard what Eungi had said, she had no choice but to go to the police station. The two of them were once again face to face, but Maru's eyes no longer held the gentleness they once did. The police began questioning if the man had threatened to extort 1 billion won from her. Maru stared at Jae-hee, but with the family lawyer present, Jae-hee dared not speak. The police pressed her, and the lawyer applied more pressure. If the truth came out about their past relationship and Jae-hee lied, her luxurious life would vanish. So, once again, she chose to cruelly accuse Maru of blackmail. As Maru listened to her words, his face remained expressionless. Inside, his emotions were in turmoil, for deep down, he still loved her. The police grew frustrated, banging their fists on the table as the two stared at each other. They told Maru that if he didn't speak up, they would assume his guilt. Yet, Maru remained silent. The interrogation ended, and as Jae-hee returned home, the maid handed her a letter that had been slipped into the mailbox. Inside was 1 billion won, the money Maru had returned. Meanwhile, Eungi, though no one dared to anger her, still couldn't defeat her father. She wanted to promote employees who had dedicated 10 years to the company into permanent positions. However, Chairman Nam shouted at her in anger. He feared that in the future, many people would try to apply for permanent positions. His money wasn't easy to take. In his anger, he threw something, and the shards of it cut Eungi's face. He told her that to become the heir, one had to be cruel and ruthless. This was the lesson Eungi had learned from her father. She had to endure everything, bide her time, and once she had power, she would drive Jae-hee, who dared to take her mother's place, out of the house. Back to Maru, because he refused to admit to the crime, and the victim's family hadn't filed a complaint, he was released soon after. However, Maru couldn't find any joy. He walked home sadly and found that his sister was gone. The neighbors told him that Choco had run out in the rain the previous day to find him and had caught a fever, now in the hospital. Maru rushed to the hospital. Seeing his sister lying lying weakly on the hospital bed, he blamed himself. He had abandoned his family, yet had gone to help an ungrateful person. This feeling of frustration made the corners of Maru's eyes fill with bloodshot veins. He drove his off-road vehicle to release the pent-up negative energy. But unexpectedly, he ran into Eunji, who had just been disrespected by her father, out racing. The two of them began racing to see who was faster. However, things took a turn when Eunji's car suddenly had brake failure. She couldn't stop it and drove straight into a cliff. Fortunately, Maru stretched out his hand and managed to pull her to safety. It seemed that she now owed him twice, but Eunji didn't care much about that. She was determined to go back to the cliff to find the doll still lying in the car. That doll was the last gift from her biological mother, so despite Maru's attempts to stop her, Eunji was determined to throw herself down the cliff to retrieve it. Seeing her determination, he reluctantly tied a rope around his waist and crawled down the slope to help her. Just as he grabbed the doll, the rope snapped, causing Maru to fall. Eunji quickly took him to the hospital. The doctor came out and informed her of his condition. Luckily, Maru had gotten caught in a tree, so he survived, but he had only suffered a few broken bones. Eunji, who was usually so proud, now spoke in a mocking tone to him, saying that he was willing to help a stranger. Clearly, he must have some ulterior motive. Maru lay on the bed, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He asked her if her parents had taught her to be so ungrateful. If she felt grateful, she should say thank you. If she felt guilty, she should apologize. He mentioned that his parents weren't well educated but still taught him this principle. He added that he didn't need her gratitude or have any ulterior motive toward her. After saying this, Maru told her to leave, hoping that they would never meet again. Eunji, who had been scolded like a child by Maru, was furious, but she couldn't entirely blame him. Having grown up in a strict environment, she had been taught that money and power were the only practical things in life. Experiencing human kindness for the first time, Eunji found it hard to adapt. In fact, the reality was evident when Jae-hee took her son to the amusement park. She hugged her son and told him to grow up quickly so he could inherit the company for her. So, if Eunji didn't stay strong, everyone would be ready to insult her. However, after meeting Maru, she began to understand what true human compassion really meant. During a family meal, she repeatedly wrote Maru's name, not even understanding the feelings stirring within her own heart. At this time, Eunji's Lawyer An from her cosmetics company, received a call from the doctor informing him that Eungi's liver was a perfect match for her father, Chairman Nam. Upon hearing this, Chairman Nam became furious. As the heir, he couldn't allow her to harm herself. He scolded his daughter for being foolish and then turned to berate Lawyer An for following his daughter's request. Seizing the opportunity, Jae-hee, standing in front of the chairman, pretended to be a caring mother. She advised Eunji not to jeopardize her health so that she could lead the company. However, in her heart, she longed for Chairman Nam to die soon so she could seize control of the company and drive Eunji out. Eungi, not wanting to be scolded by her father any further, remained silent and endured. What she didn't expect was that in an attempt to win her father's favor, Jae-hee was also willing to undergo the liver transplant for him. Jae-hee claimed that if the chairman were no longer alive, she wouldn't want to live either. Chairman Nam, seeing that Jae-hee wasn't related to him by blood, said nothing in response. At the dining table, the only person on Eunji's side was Lawyer Park, while Lawyer An sided with Jae-hee. Both lawyers were well aware of the ongoing power struggle within the family. Because she willingly donated her liver, Jae-hee gradually won Chairman Nam's affection. On the car ride, he instructed Lawyer An to transfer ownership of the shopping center in Busan to her. However, what she truly desired was not just that. Chairman Nam offered her the shopping center so that she wouldn't feel indebted, but Jae-hee refused, saying her gesture was one made by a wife for her husband, subtly implying that the chairman should remember the debt of gratitude she owed him today. Moved by her words, Chairman Nam ordered Lawyer An to announce the news to the press and organize a grand wedding with Jae-hee. Eungi was immediately informed of the news. As she looked at her doll, she recalled a memory from the past when her mother couldn't bear it any longer and left, wanting to take Eunji with her. However, Eunji had refused. She had to win first, then take her revenge before she could release the pent-up resentment. Eungi then looked at the gift she had given to Maru, which had been returned, and decided to bring it to him at the hospital. However, upon arriving, she learned that Maru had been discharged an hour ago. For the first time in her life, Eungi felt disappointed for not being able to meet the man. Just then, as a nurse entered, she asked for Maru's address. Meanwhile, Maru had already returned home. Though he had only been in the hospital for a few days, Jae-gil had brought his girlfriend to stay with him. Maru was unaware that Jae-hee had even come this far, but she had been called back by Lawyer An. As Maru stepped out to look for his sister, he ran into Eungi, who immediately criticized how cramped the neighborhood was. Maru, feeling helpless about the lack of building permits for his house, didn't want to continue the conversation with Eunji. He mistakenly assumed that Eunji had feelings for him and warned her to maintain her dignity. After such a blow, Eunji found it difficult to hold herself together. She clarified that she came out of gratitude and didn't want to owe anyone anything. Hearing this, Maru brought his face close to hers and with that gesture claimed the debt was paid. After that, he didn't pay any more attention to Eunji and simply got into his car and drove off. It was the first time Eungi had ever been abandoned like that, and she felt deeply uncomfortable. Just as Maru got into the car, he received a call from his sister, Choco, who had gone to look for their mother. mother. However, when she arrived, she found the new husband of their mother smashing things. Hearing the shouting and crashing through the phone, Maru immediately became worried for his sister. While the man wasn't his mother, he was Choko's biological father, and his father had 2 wives. In a hurry, Maru was about to leave when Eungi jumped into the car. She wanted to argue with him. She couldn't let herself go back feeling humiliated. Left with no choice, Maru reluctantly agreed to drive her along. On the way, Maru stepped on the accelerator, speeding up, but Eungi, who loved speed, wasn't frightened. Maru warned her that they would leave Seoul and wouldn't be able to return that day, so if she wanted to get out, it was now or never. However, Eungi stubbornly refused to get off the car. She handed Maru the gift box, but he rejected it. Eungi explained that she only wanted to make up for things, but Maru made it clear he didn't like watches. He subtly hinted that he preferred something else. Maru has a goal in mind, and Eungi is the one who will help him achieve it, so he decides to pursue her. Eungi, sensing that Maru isn't quite normal, tries to get out of the car, but it's too late. Maru refuses to stop because his sister is still waiting for him. After a long drive from morning until late at night, Maru points out the bus station to her. He also warns that if they meet again, he will pursue her to reach his goal. Eungi isn't sure if he's serious, so she decides to get out of the car and follow him. Ahead of them, they find a drinking establishment where a woman is being yelled at by her husband. This woman is Choko's mother, who abandoned her child to marry a new man, only to now be mistreated and beaten by him. When the man attempts to grab a chair to hit the woman, Maru intervenes. Unable to stand the sight, he steps in, but the man shoves him aside and continues to strike his wife, making Maru furious, and he punches the man. However, the woman, seeing Maru hit her husband, grabs a broom and begins hitting him. The wound that Maru recently sustained still causes him pain, but just then, Choko runs up to stop her mother from hurting her brother. Maru, feeling lonely, sits by the beach, thinking that it seems like the whole world despises him. Eungi slowly approaches and observes his solitary figure. Her heart stirs with a sense of empathy. She sits beside him, offering her limited comfort, and they share a quiet moment together. After a while, Choko's mother arrives and returns the girl to Maru. She loves her daughter deeply, but believes that keeping her would bring hardship. Choko doesn't want to be a burden to her brother, but she is also rejected and pushed away by her mother. Maru can't understand Choko's mother's feelings. He feels she doesn't deserve to be a mother, but in her mind, it doesn't matter how she's misunderstood, as long as her daughter can live well. In that moment, Eungi feels a deep sense of empathy. The 3 of them sit in silence in the car, with Choko's sobs breaking the stillness. Meanwhile, Jae-hee brings a bottle of wine to the home of Lawyer An. Once inside, she directly asks him to help keep the relationship between her and Maru a secret. In an attempt to gain his sympathy, or perhaps to truly share her pain, Jae-hee opens up to Lawyer An about her past, how her mother was a prostitute, and she never knew her father. Her brother was addicted to gambling, and both her mother and brother sold her into prostitution for money. Because of her difficult life, money and status became more important to her than her own life. She tells him that it was Maru who saved her when she was about to be sold into prostitution, but later, she betrayed him. To make him feel more sympathy, Jae-hee reveals that Maru had once taken the blame for a crime she committed. As she recounts this, she becomes overwhelmed with emotion. Drinking more wine, Lawyer An, who is manipulated by his feelings for Jae-hee, agrees to help her. He drives her home, and in her drunken state, she kisses him to assert control over him completely. This scene is witnessed by Maru, who has just dropped Eungi off. The pain of seeing the person he once loved betray him again is too much for him, leaving him heartbroken. Maru feels the weight of his 5 years in prison, having endured such hardship, only to face betrayal and heartbreak like this. He steps out of the car, staring directly at Jae-hee with a look of reproach. Afterward, he opens the door to call Eungi to wake up and tells her to go inside. Eungi, having learned about the complex relationship between Maru and his stepmother, boldly speaks up in front of Jae-hee, saying she's curious to meet Maru again. Maru smiles softly, but Jae-hee, still hiding her feelings for him, feels a sense of insecurity as she faces Eungi. While getting their hair done together, Jae-hee can't contain her jealousy and asks Eungi if she has any relationship with Maru and if she knows what kind of person he is. She suggests that Maru must have some ulterior motive in getting close to Eungi. Eungi, sensing Jae-hee's attempt to push her away from Maru, retorts with a question that leaves Jae-hee speechless. Eungi asks, does Jae-hee really understand Maru? If he's after money, isn't that exactly the kind of person you are? Why are you talking bad about him to me? Jae-hee is left silent and helpless. At the same time, Lawyer Park, who sides with Eungi, visits the area where Maru lives, asking the locals about Jae-hee's past. However, what he doesn't know is that his every move is being monitored by one of Lawyer An's subordinates, who reports back to him. Lawyer An, who is infatuated with Jae-hee, decides to help conceal her secrets. While with Chairman Nam, Lawyer An tries to speak highly of Jae-hee, knowing that the chairman has always been distrustful of women. However, Chairman Nam now feels that Jae-hee is different and starts believing he can trust her. Meanwhile, Maru's intentions are unclear. He might be seeking revenge or something else, but when he meets Eungi and sees Jae-hee, he remains calm, greeting her with a polite bow and pretending not to recognize her. However, he subtly criticizes her by saying that he's seen her on TV, a reporter who exposes societal injustices, implying that she's being hypocritical. Eungi enjoys this jab, praising Jae-hee's supposed integrity, which leaves Jae-hee Jae-hee speechless and unable to respond. At this moment, Chairman Nam enters. When he learns that Ma-ru and his daughter are getting to know each other, he invites him to have breakfast. At the dining table, Chairman Nam probes into Ma-ru's background. Ma-ru answers plainly that his parents are deceased, and he had dropped out of college to become a bartender. When the chairman presses him on why he quit school, Ma-ru refuses to elaborate. The chairman then turns to his daughter, prompting her to answer on Ma-ru's behalf, causing Jae-hee to tremble in fear. Eun-gi, however, responds assertively, telling her father that she likes Ma-ru for who he is now, and she doesn't care much about his past. She adds that if her father is so keen on digging into people's histories, he should focus on the woman he's about to marry and how well he knows her past. This statement enrages Chairman Nam, who angrily throws a glass of water in his daughter's face. In front of everyone, Chairman Nam strips Eun-gi of her inheritance rights to the company, making it clear that Jae-hee should give Ma-ru some money to get him to leave. Lawyer An pushes the chairman out of the room, but Eun-gi refuses to accept her father's decision and chases after him. The room is now left with just two people who once loved each other deeply, but Ma-ru has changed. He asks Jae-hee how much money she intends to give him. Jae-hee, losing her composure, questions his motives for approaching her family, suggesting that he wants revenge. She begins to mock Ma-ru, telling him to think about his sick sister and his criminal past, implying that he should take some money and live a peaceful life. This enrages Ma-ru, and he slams the glass of water, reminding her that if he hadn't taken the fall for her, he could have been a successful doctor by now. He accuses Jae-hee of being unworthy of the luxurious world she's in, and vows to drag her back into the world she truly belongs to. Jae-hee, both broken and fearful, is left speechless. As Ma-ru walks out, he encounters Eun-gi. He gently dries her hair with a handkerchief, showing that they share a bond, both victims of their family's struggles. Eun-gi's father forbids her from being with him, and Ma-ru asks for one last kiss to say goodbye. Though he feels a certain attraction to her, Ma-ru realizes that kissing her here would be awkward and suggests that she find a place she likes to meet him again. Eun-gi, having accepted the breakup with the one she loves, is then dealt another blow. She receives the news that her father has fired her from the company. Eun-gi feels trapped between her father's demands to abandon both love and career. She is unwilling to accept this and brings her documents to the meeting room, determined to participate as usual. However, when she arrives, she finds the door locked. Unafraid of her father, Eun-gi bangs on the door and screams, causing the shareholders inside to feel awkward. Seeing her determination, Chairman Nam reluctantly orders Lawyer An to open the door. Eun-gi calmly enters and takes her seat, continuing the meeting as though nothing had changed. Chairman Nam proceeds with the meeting, but his focus is on selling the resort in Japan to raise funds for a new project in Korea. Eun-gi vehemently opposes the sale, as that resort was her mother's favorite place. At the mention of his ex-wife, Chairman Nam becomes furious and orders Eun-gi to leave. Father and daughter engage in a heated argument, but Eun-gi's objections have no effect on her father's cold resolve. In an attempt to assert his control, Chairman Nam hands the project over to Jae-hee, allowing her to gain experience with the company's major projects, which only deepens Eun-gi's frustration. Jae-hee, upon hearing this news, is stunned, realizing that her efforts have finally begun to bear fruit. Meanwhile, Eun-gi, feeling defeated and lost, calls Ma-ru. He wants to be closer to her, but Eun-gi tells him she has gone to a small island in Japan to honor her mother's memory. She shares her distress, revealing that she is about to be kicked out of the house. Ma-ru reassures her, telling her that he would accept her and offer her a place in his home, even though it may not be large. As they talk, Jae-hee unexpectedly appears on the island, also there to oversee the sale of the resort. With no one else from the company around, Jae-hee's true nature starts to show, revealing her ambitions. Eun-gi didn't realize that her phone call was still connected to Ma-ru. He felt uneasy because Jae-hee had completely lost her true nature. The girl who once worked hard for her dreams, the girl he had loved, had been corrupted by wealth. Eun-gi couldn't accept that the resort would be sold, but despite staying up all night trying to come up with a plan, she couldn't find any weaknesses. Feeling hopeless, she lay down on the grass and screamed that she didn't want to give up, but at that moment, there was nothing she could do. Exhausted, she fell asleep on the grass until morning. Early the next day, a pair of feet appeared beside her. She thought it would be a romantic moment, but to her surprise, she was lifted and thrown into the pond. The person was Ma-ru, who had come to find her. Panicking, Eun-gi crawled out of the water and heard Ma-ru cheer her on, saying, "Now that you're awake, keep going." In fact, the day before, Lawyer An had visited the bar where Ma-ru worked to warn him not to continue interfering with Jae-hee's life. However, Ma-ru, who had sacrificed 5 years of his life and was now betrayed, wasn't about to forgive easily. So he immediately set off for the island in Japan, where Eun-gi was. He arrived at midnight, but Eun-gi was still busy working. Not wanting to disturb her, he decided to wait outside all night. It seemed that Ma-ru's intentions were not just about revenge. Deep down in his heart, he had developed feelings for Eun-gi. Seeing her tired and lying on the grass, he decided to help her. Ma-ru called his close friend Jae-gil in Korea. Although Jae-gil was easily tricked, he was very skilled in finance. When Ma-ru woke him up in the middle of the night to ask for help with the financial report, Jae-gil was a bit angry, but since Ma-ru was his best friend, he decided to spend the whole night teaching him how to analyze financial statements. Soon after, Ma-ru's brilliant mind came into play. He finally figured out a way to increase the resort's revenue to raise raise the necessary capital without having to sell it. The next morning, after throwing Yoongi into the water, Ma-ru revealed the method to her. Her father's company had diversified investments, and Ma-ru found a company her father had invested in that appeared to be on the verge of bankruptcy. However, inside the industry, it was known that the company was actually growing due to mining operations. By gathering capital from that company, along with selling the less profitable companies under Yoongi's management, they could raise enough funds for her father to invest in the project in Korea without having to sell the resort. Yoongi was amazed at his skills, but now she no longer had the time to thank him properly. So she promised that when the battle was over, she would thank him with a kiss. Yoongi immediately called Jae-hee to demand that the contract signing be postponed. But Jae-hee wasn't a fool. She had arranged for the partners to come earlier than planned to sign the contract. By the time Yoongi arrived, everything had already been finalized. Yoongi was stunned for a moment. Was she really going to let her and Ma-ru's efforts go to waste? Yoongi couldn't accept that. Eungi tore the contract in front of the partners and Jae-hee. This rendered the main contract useless. As long as she was alive, no one would be allowed to buy or sell the resort. Eungi then tried to call her father to explain and present the way to raise capital. But before she could say anything, Jae-hee snatched the phone away and slapped her. Jae-hee arrogantly declared that, as the stepmother, she would not allow Eungi to be disrespectful. She also reminded her that her father wanted to sell the resort to erase all memories related to Eungi's mother. After all, money for the capital could be arranged easily. Eungi was devastated and heartbroken by these words. She couldn't understand why her father would do such a thing and screamed in frustration, unable to stand. Eungi only wanted to preserve the memories of her mother and help her father raise the necessary funds. Little did she know, her father wanted to erase all traces of her mother. She began to feel completely hopeless. Luckily, Ma-ru was there for her. He called Eungi and brought hope back to her. He told her to put the phone on speaker and let the partners hear. Ma-ru had already anticipated that this unfortunate situation would happen, so he had investigated the purchasing company and discovered a dark secret. The company had previously been involved in chemical waste that polluted the water supply, leading to widespread condemnation. Now, they had simply changed their name to continue their operations. The plan to buy the resort was actually to turn it into a chemical company. If the local residents found out about the company's past, they would definitely sue them again. After the threat, the partners were too scared to continue the contract negotiations, and Eungi successfully turned the tables, winning in front of Jae-hee. Following this victory, Eungi and Ma-ru met to celebrate their success. Meanwhile, Chairman Nam, although seemingly harsh and authoritarian, wasn't without affection for his daughter. He wanted to protect Eungi in his own way, which is why he had been so strict with her. He was also aware that Lawyer Park had feelings for his daughter, and seeing his capability, Chairman Nam decided to entrust Eungi's care to him. Lawyer Park promised the chairman that, even if everyone else betrayed Eungi, he would always stand by her and protect her. As he left Chairman Nam's house, the servant was asked to follow him and hand over a photo he had accidentally dropped. Chairman Nam casually asked the servant if she knew the man in the photo. She replied that she had seen him before and mentioned that just the day before, the man had returned an envelope containing 1 billion won to Jae-hee. Lawyer Park immediately began to suspect a connection between Jae-hee and Ma-ru. When he checked the security camera footage, he was shocked to see Jae-hee secretly meeting with Lawyer An, betraying Chairman Nam. Back with Yoongi, it was the first time she had ever taken the time to do her makeup and dress up for herself, preparing to meet the one who made her heart flutter. She wore her most elegant and beautiful dress, standing at the bus stop, waiting for Ma-ru. However, Ma-ru was late because, before that, Jae-hee had called him to meet. He didn't want to concern himself with her, but when he heard her say that she missed him, the pain of betrayal resurfaced, compelling him to meet her. Ma-ru arrived at the meeting point, but only gave Jae-hee 10 minutes to talk. Knowing that time was short, she tried to evoke past memories in hopes of making him change his mind and stop interfering with her life. However, after the 10 minutes were up, he coldly turned away and walked off. No matter how much she begged, Jae-hee, knowing he still had feelings for her, took the risk of jumping into the water. Without hesitation, Ma-ru leaped in to rescue her. He performed CPR on the woman who had betrayed him, torn between love and hate. At that moment, it was difficult to distinguish whether his actions were driven by love or resentment. Ultimately, Ma-ru chose to be with the one who truly loved him, leaving Jae-hee behind. Meanwhile, Eungi continued to wait, patiently but anxiously. Ma-ru, having rescued Jae-hee, brought her back to the resort and hooked her up to an IV drip. When Jae-hee regained consciousness, she immediately questioned him, asking if he hadn't yet forgotten her, and whether that was why he flew all the way to Japan to meet her. Ma-ru tried to clarify that he hadn't come for her, but Jae-hee pressed on, asking why he would save her if he didn't care. Ma-ru, unsure of how to respond, was caught in the trap Jae-hee had set for him. She began to manipulate him, suggesting that she would return to him as before. If he were the Ma-ru of the past, he might have been deceived, but now, he was different. He asked her how long she intended to keep using these tactics, how long she would continue her deceit. He told her that the girl he once loved was Jae-hee, but the person before him now was no longer that person. Jae-hee was stunned by Ma-ru's words. After leaving her, Ma-ru remembered his appointment with Eungi and rushed to the meeting spot. When he arrived, he saw Eungi patiently waiting for him, having fallen asleep on the bridge. She hadn't left. A sign of the respect she had for her promise to him. Eunji was the reason Ma-ru began to believe in love again. Unable to express his feelings with words, he poured them out through a passionate kiss. Ma-ru truly had feelings for Eunji, but if he had to use her for revenge against his first love, he felt he had no other choice. The lines between love, hatred, and desire seemed blurred for Ma-ru, creating a magnetic pull that made Eunji go from intrigued to truly in love with him. Back in Korea, Eunji asked the butler for recommendations on where to buy beautiful dresses and learn makeup. The butler was taken aback by her request. When Eunji returned home, she was shocked to find her belongings already packed, and her father was there with Jae-hee, preparing to leave. Eunji quickly understood who was behind this. President Nam, in a heartless move, had kicked Eun-gi out of the house, even confiscating her credit cards, car, and hotel cards. While Eun-gi was heartbroken, it wasn't because of her father's cruel treatment. She had been raised with this kind of treatment from him. What truly hurt her was knowing she had successfully protected the resort, preserving the memories of her mother. However, her father remained indifferent, using the situation as an excuse to vent his anger on her. President Nam expressed his dissatisfaction, blaming Yoon-gi for ruining the company's business and refusing to admit her mistakes or apologize. He criticized her for wanting to argue with him, saying that as the heir, she should have a deeper understanding of things. It was this kind of upbringing that had shaped Yoon-gi's strong character. She didn't view her actions as destructive, but as the most righteous and successful decision she had ever made. Yoon-gi told her father that she would leave without taking any luggage. She even stated that if she had nothing to wear, she would strip off her clothes, as her father seemed to think everything she had was bought with his money. With those words, Eunji walked away without a glance back. President Nam's eyes reddened, but he didn't even bother to look at his daughter. Lawyer Park immediately chased after Eunji. He offered her his credit card, but Eunji refused. She handed him her wallet containing the car keys to return to her father. Before leaving, Eunji reminded Lawyer Park to continue helping her father. Eungi's confidence came from knowing where she would go next: Ma-ru's house. Inside, Jae-gil was dancing happily, while Choco scolded him for making noise late at night. Hearing a knock on the door, Choco immediately ran to open it. Since she had met Eungi before, Choco didn't find her presence strange. However, Ma-ru was not at home at that moment. He was with Jae-hee. To put it more accurately, Ma-ru had to go to work, but was forced to meet with Jae-hee. She had bought out the entire bar where Ma-ru worked, just to talk to him privately. Jae-hee stubbornly tried to manipulate Ma-ru's emotions, hoping that he would leave Eunji and return to her because she still loved him. Ma-ru remained silent, listening to Jae-hee's performance. Just then, his phone buzzed with a message from Jae-gil, saying that Eunji was on her way to the bar to find him. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ma-ru called Eunji and spoke lovingly to her. His eyes were fixed on Jae-hee, making it clear, almost as a challenge, that he had moved on and was now in a relationship with someone else, making it impossible for her to manipulate him anymore. Jae-hee felt humiliated by Ma-ru's words, while Eunji, blissfully unaware, was overjoyed. Jae-hee quickly realized what was happening and asked Ma-ru if he was using Eunji to get back at her. However, he replied that he genuinely loved Eunji. He further added that she was from a wealthy family, and with her love for him, he couldn't just let her go. He then told Jae-hee to leave quickly because the atmosphere would be awkward when Eunji arrived. But Jae-hee, without any shame, forcefully kissed Ma-ru, taunting him that she would do the same in front of Eungi once she arrived. She said that if the truth came out, they could both suffer together. Ma-ru wasn't easy to deal with. He forcefully kissed Jae-hee back and took a photo of it, letting her know that the naive Ma-ru she once knew was long gone, having died in prison. Now, if she wanted to try to control him, it wouldn't be so easy. Although Ma-ru spoke coldly, when he saw Jae-hee's old joint pain flare up again, he couldn't help but feel a pang of pain in his heart. Meanwhile, outside the bar, Eunji had just arrived, but as she got out of the car, she received a message from Lawyer Park with a photo of Jae-hee secretly betraying her father. Eunji, panic-stricken, immediately called Lawyer Park to ask what had happened. By the time Jae-hee went outside, Eunji had already left. Just then, Lawyer An arrived to pick Jae-hee up. While Lawyer Ain was aware of Jae-hee's scheming ways, he was still willing to tolerate her actions and protect her. Eungi then rushed to the bar to meet with Lawyer Park. She was furious, thinking the photo was doctored and had been leaked online, with Lawyer Park not knowing how to handle it. However, he explained that the photo was taken from the security camera outside her father's house and was not altered. This was a warning. Jae-hee was working closely with Lawyer An and could easily take over the company. Now, Eungi had to return to the company where she had ruined the plan to sell the resort. It would be very difficult for her to restore her position. The only way she could regain her standing was to resolve the workers' strike, using that as a way to atone for her actions. Only then could she return to the company and fight for her place. Eungi, now calm, decided to follow Lawyer Park's advice. She went to meet the striking workers and chose to drink with them. The rule was simple: whoever lost had to meet the demands of the opposing side. Eungi began drinking heavily, taking in large amounts of alcohol, risking it all. Lawyer Park sat next to her, feeling heartbroken. Eunji knew she couldn't drink much more. The workers weren't necessarily going to agree to end the strike because, in the end, it was in their best interest. So Eunji chose to leave before things got worse. Lawyer Park wanted to take her home, but she refused. Meanwhile, Ma-ru sat alone at the bar until midnight, waiting for Eunji, who had said she would meet him there. But after waiting for so long and seeing seeing no sign of her, he had no choice but to leave. On his way home, he received a call from Yoon-gi. Hearing her voice, he realized she was drunk and figured she was still wandering around. But to his surprise, she was sitting in front of his house. One was drunk and the other sober, holding the phone, talking to each other. Yoon-gi confided in him, saying she felt like a hedgehog, small and only able to protect herself by putting up her quills. Now, she didn't want to struggle anymore. She just wanted a solid shoulder to lean on. Maru understood and took her into his house to rest. As he looked at Eungi's face, guilt stirred inside him. He stayed with her the entire night. The next morning, when Eungi opened her eyes, she saw the man lying next to her. Her heart raced with happiness. As soon as he woke up, Eungi asked, "How did you feel when I said all those sweet things yesterday?" Maru looked at her intently, his eyes mesmerizing her. Suddenly he said, "Meeting me is like meeting bad luck. If you run now, maybe you'll still make it." His words weren't meant as a joke. Maru seemed to no longer want to use Eungi, but if she stayed, he wasn't sure what would happen. Since she loved Maru, Eungi took his words as a joke. She kissed him as her answer. Meanwhile, Lawyer Park was struggling to find a way to handle Jae-hee's situation. He then saw the video of Maru bringing Eungi home. He didn't know what exactly Maru's relationship was with Jae-hee and Eungi, but Lawyer Park had started to pay more attention to him. After a phone call, he learned that Eungi was now in a relationship with Maru. In another development, Jae-hee and Chairman Nam's wedding day was approaching. Lawyer On took her to try on wedding dresses. Seeing Jae-hee glowing in a pure white dress, Lawyer On's heart beat faster. It seemed like he was ready to do anything for her. While Jae-hee was trying on the dress, she received a call from her brother. The voice on the other end made her tremble with fear, reminding her of the past. At the same time, Maru came home to find that Jae-gil had been severely beaten by someone. Choco told Maru that Jae-hee's brother had come looking for her, and when he couldn't find her, he'd beat Jae-gil and even took Maru's phone from his room. Back to Eungi. Since she lost in the drinking contest with the workers, it meant she had to agree to their terms. The workers wanted a salary increase and fair benefits for their work, so Eungi agreed to all their demands. They were concerned about what Chairman Nam would do if she agreed. Yoon-gi responded optimistically, saying that the worst that could happen was that she would be removed from the household registry. After handling the labor dispute, she went to the bus stop to head back to Maru's house. Before she left, Lawyer Park didn't try to stop her, but handed her a file, telling her to open it once she arrived home. As she reached the neighborhood, a neighbor approached her and asked if she knew Maru. Eungi replied that she did, and the woman handed her a photo, asking her to give it to Maru. Eungi was shocked when she saw the photo. It was a graduation picture of Maru with Jae-hee, looking very close. Eungi immediately questioned why Maru had lied to her, claiming not to know Jae-hee if they were clearly familiar with each other. Maru came out and smiled, greeting Eungi home, but she felt a sense of fear of being deceived, betrayed, and of eventually hating him. In fact, Maru had not come out to greet Eungi, but rather to meet Jae-hee's brother. He hadn't expected to run into Eungi returning, so he smiled. The neighbor giving Eungi the old photo was no accident. She had been bribed by Lawyer On to do so. Lawyer and believed that the phone call at the wedding dress shop was Maru threatening Jae-hee, so he wanted to use this method to get revenge on Maru for her. As Maru approached Eungi, she quickly hid the photo. Eungi was afraid of the truth, afraid that Maru had deceived her, and afraid of his past with Jae-hee. Most of all, she feared having to part ways with Maru, so she lied, telling him there was nothing wrong and that she was fine. Maru noticed that his girlfriend seemed a little off, but he was in a hurry, so he decided to overlook it for now. Maru then went to meet Jae-hee's brother, a thug. As soon as they met, he offered to take revenge for Maru. He knew that 5 years ago, Maru had taken the fall for his sister, and now she had betrayed him. At the same time, Eungi sought out Lawyer Park. She asked about Maru's past, knowing that Lawyer Park could find out anything. Sure enough, he revealed that Maru had been imprisoned in the past for taking the blame for someone, and that someone was likely Jae-hee. However, Eungi was surprised that she chose to overlook it. Lawyer Park reminded her that Maru was approaching her to get closer to Jae-hee, but Eungi refused to believe it. She didn't care about the past or any deep connection between them. She even warned Lawyer Park not to interfere with Maru. Maru had feelings for Eungi, but it was only infatuation. His feelings for Jae-hee, on the other hand, were true love. Maru warned Jae-hee's brother not to touch Eungi, or he would end up back in prison for 8 more years. However, Jae-hee's brother, who had been framed and sent to prison, wasn't about to let things go easily. Maru delivered a swift kick and gave him one last warning. If he touched Eungi, he would die by Maru's hands. Back with Lawyer Park, even though Eungi treated him coldly, Lawyer Park still went to ask Chairman Nam to allow her to return to the company. When Chairman Nam refused, Lawyer Park threatened by offering his own resignation. If Chairman Nam didn't allow Eungi to return, he would step down. After working with him for so long, the sudden coldness from the chairman made him realize something was wrong. Sure enough, Lawyer Park explained the situation. If Eungi wasn't allowed back at the company, she would lose her will to fight. Outside, there was someone more important to her. Maru, the naive man who, despite being betrayed by Jae-hee, still wanted to protect her. Today, Jae-hee's brother had taken Maru's phone and called her, leading Jae-hee to misunderstand that Maru was teaming up with her brother for revenge. However, Maru didn't bother to explain much. Jae-hee had already despised him. When Chairman Nam asked about Maru's identity, Jae-hee labeled him as greedy, saying that unless Chairman Nam handed handed over all his wealth to Ma-ru, he wouldn't stop. Chairman Nam knew that his daughter was at Ma-ru's house, so he ordered Jae-hee to come up with a way to drive a wedge between them and bring Eun-ji back. Meanwhile, Ma-ru had just returned home when Eun-ji invited him to go up to the mountain with her. They planned to sit, drink, and enjoy the view of the city lights while talking. Even though they were in love, Eun-ji understood that liking someone was different from truly loving them. She told Ma-ru that if he ever married the person he truly loved in the future, he should send her an invitation. Although she wouldn't attend, she would send a congratulatory gift. Ma-ru seemed to realize that Eun-ji might know something, but he wasn't afraid. He had warned her many times that being with him would be like meeting bad luck. Eun-ji, in fact, was very strong when she realized she was being used. She calmly told Ma-ru that they should part ways. He didn't try to stop her or make excuses because he knew he had made a mistake by approaching her. Both of them, strong and lonely, didn't shed a tear despite the sadness. Eun-ji, exhausted, wandered back in a daze when Jae-hee appeared. Following Chairman Nam's orders, Jae-hee came to bring her back. Meanwhile, when Ma-ru returned home, he was knocked unconscious by someone. It was Jae-hee's cruel doing. She had previously suggested to Chairman Nam that they hire thugs to deal with Ma-ru quickly. However, the chairman didn't want that, instructing her to first bring his daughter back. But Jae-hee, already enraged, decided to take matters into her own hands. As Ma-ru was being violently beaten by two thugs, Jae-hee called. One of the thugs handed Ma-ru the phone. Jae-hee didn't care whether Ma-ru lived or died as she spoke to him. She had sent someone to deliver a large stack of documents about significant assets, including a factory and money, just to convince him to stay away from Eun-ji. She offered him a place to live, money, and status, asking him to follow her orders. If he wanted to leave the country, she had already prepared a plane ticket for him, but if he didn't comply, she would force Chairman Nam to harm Ma-ru's loved ones. Although Jae-hee was the one behind all this, she used Chairman Nam as a shield to protect herself. Ma-ru never imagined that in the end, he would protect her, while she would act like this. Fortunately, Ma-ru had a good friend in Jae-gil. When he learned that Ma-ru had been beaten, Jae-gil quickly took Choco on a trip to hide out. He was worried that Choco would be traumatized if she saw her brother beaten, so he took her away for a while to allow Ma-ru to rest and recover, and also to keep them hidden from those who might try to harm Ma-ru's family. Eun-ji was brought back to her home by Jae-hee, and the news about her kiss with Lawyer An reached Chairman Nam. Furious, he called Lawyer Park to confront him about why he hadn't reported the incident to him. Lawyer Park explained that both he and Eun-ji were afraid the chairman would be psychologically shocked and fate, so they had chosen not to inform him. When Chairman Nam realized his daughter was also aware of this, he was deeply embarrassed and almost fainted. Chairman Nam ordered Lawyer Park to keep secret the fact that he knew about his wife's infidelity and then gave him the authority to devise a plan to take revenge on his behalf. No matter how vile the plan was, if Lawyer Park succeeded in taking revenge, the chairman would marry off Eun-ji to him. The goal was simple: make sure Lawyer An and Jae-hee ended up in prison for over 30 years. At the same time, Lawyer An had started to notice the security camera outside Chairman Nam's house. It seemed like the camera had recorded the kiss between him and Jae-hee. Sooner or later, he would be exposed, and he was already thinking of ways to escape. Meanwhile, Eun-ji, despite being physically exhausted, was determined to leave the house and find Ma-ru. She had broken up with him yesterday, and the fact that he didn't try to stop her made her deeply sad. She vaguely overheard Jae-hee threatening him, but Eun-ji couldn't leave the house because her father had assigned bodyguards to watch her 24/7. Angrily, Eun-gi turned to Jae-hee and called her a malicious woman, accusing her of using cruel schemes and sending people to beat up Ma-ru. Since no one else was at home, Jae-hee casually admitted it, revealing that she had indeed orchestrated the attack. However, a moment later, Jae-hee received a phone call from her brother. It was then that she realized Ma-ru had always protected her, and learning this filled her with a sense of guilt she couldn't shake. Despite this, it was still just a fleeting feeling. Tormented by guilt, Jae-hee decided to cook the dishes that Ma-ru used to love, then put on makeup to look her best, planning to go find him. Jae-hee was greedy, desiring both wealth and love, but the one who truly loved Ma-ru with all her heart was Eun-gi. In the midst of the rain, Eun-gi sneaked out to find him, walking barefoot through the rain, standing in front of his door calling his name. The door was locked, and there was no response. Determined, she decided to stand there in the rain. Her heart ached for her love, seeing that Ma-ru had to come out, battered and bruised, just to greet her. When she saw his swollen face, Eun-gi was deeply pained. She didn't know how those evil people had hurt him to this extent. Tears mixed with the rain, flowing out her heart's sorrow. Her first kiss was with Ma-ru, and he was the first person she had truly loved. Right then, Eun-gi's only wish was to see him every day. Ma-ru wiped her tears, telling her she was his replica, a replica who, for love, was willing to forgive the other. Eun-gi had given up her wealthy life, renounced the inheritance and the hatred, wanting only to build a new life with Ma-ru. Touched by her sincerity, Ma-ru's feelings, which had started as mere affection, gradually turned into love. He embraced her tightly. Although he had intended to be sincere, when he saw Jae-hee in front of him, Ma-ru's eyes hardened with a blend of hatred and love. Both emotions battled inside him, but his embrace of Eun-gi was firm, showing he would do anything, even use her, to get revenge on the cruel woman in front of him. Ma-ru led Eun-gi inside to treat the wounds on her feet. Eun-gi was heartbroken when she saw Ma-ru's face, cruelly beaten beaten by those people. She wanted to ask him about his injuries, but Ma-ru kept avoiding the subject, steering the conversation elsewhere. He told her he would go out to buy some food for her, despite his own pain. Though still hurt, he grabbed an umbrella and went outside. He passed by the food Jae-hee had left for him, but he couldn't bring himself to touch it. The sight of it disgusted him, just like Jae-hee herself. When he returned home, he found Eunji, the woman who loved him the most, sleeping, waiting for him. He carefully placed her on the bed and covered her legs. As he watched her sleep peacefully, Ma-ru didn't know what to do. Should he stop or let things unfold naturally as he continued his pursuit of revenge? But then, he saw the note that Eunji had left for him. It was a picture Jae-hee had once given to Ma-ru in the past. She had invited him to come enjoy the place, just like on their first date. However, the past was gone, and the present was right in front of him. Eunji was the one he truly loved, and he had to love her sincerely, no matter the cost. So, the next morning, Ma-ru went to a shopping mall to buy clothes and shoes for Eunji, preparing for their upcoming trip. When Jae-hee called, he ignored her call, causing her to become furious. She was also more worried than ever, especially since Chairman Nam had learned about her and Lawyer An, and informed Jae-hee that the chairman had updated his will, and it seemed likely that he would leave everything to Eunji rather than to her or her son. After years of humiliation as a mistress, Jae-hee was devastated that she hadn't gained anything from it. Feeling like death was the only option left, she decided to manipulate Ma-ru one last time. Unable to reach him by phone, she sent him a voice message, claiming that her brother wanted to kill her and begging Ma-ru to come and take her away. As Ma-ru returned home with the food, he received the voice message. Eunji was waiting for him inside, but he chose to call Jae-hee instead, expressing concern for her. Once again, Ma-ru chose to leave the person who loved him and went to Jae-hee. Eunji went outside to find only the shopping bags he had left behind, with a message claiming he was busy. However, Jae-hee quickly exposed Ma-ru's lie by sending Eunji a message, revealing that Ma-ru would be going to her. Ma-ru arrived at Jae-hee's house, only to find it in complete disarray. It was clear that Jae-hee had staged everything. When Ma-ru saw that Jae-hee was injured, he immediately went to find medical supplies for her. But just as he was about to help, he received a call from Jae-hee's brother, asking for Ma-ru to bail him out from the police station. He explained that he had been tricked into drinking the most expensive bottle of alcohol and now couldn't pay, leading to a fight at a police station in Busan. But Ma-ru was in Seoul, and suddenly, the realization hit him. If her brother was in Busan, then who had hurt Jae-hee? He finally understood that he had been made a fool in Jae-hee's game. Ma-ru continued to play along with Jae-hee's game, treating the injuries she had inflicted on herself. Meanwhile, Eunji arrived, consumed by disappointment and heartache. She overheard the painful words Ma-ru spoke from the depths of his heart to Jae-hee. He told her that she understood him better than anyone else, that she knew he was always swayed by her. He admitted that he didn't want revenge, but rather wanted to pull her back to the person she once was. Whenever she claimed to be in danger, he would always rush to her side. Ma-ru seemed like a fool, abandoning everything for Jae-hee, who cried and said she would give up everything to be with him again. Eungi, unable to bear the sight of their words, turned away in despair, feeling both heartbroken and betrayed. She cursed herself for loving someone so deeply entangled in his feelings. However, just as Eunji was about to leave, Ma-ru finally spoke the truth. He declared that from now on, he would no longer care, no matter if Jae-hee went to hell or faced worse. His feelings for her had ended. Jae-hee was stunned, unable to believe his words, especially after everything that had happened between them. In that moment, Ma-ru reflected on the past, remembering why he had loved Jae-hee in the first place. It wasn't because of any special connection, but because she was strong, someone who stood up for the weak. But as soon as she no longer needed to be strong, she resorted to manipulation and deceit. At this point, all three of them were left in pain, each heartbroken. Ma-ru saw Eungi driving past him, and he realized that she must have known everything. Jae-hee then called to ask if he loved Eunji. Ma-ru didn't answer the question. Instead, he said he regretted pulling her into all of this. From now on, he would love Eunji sincerely. Ma-ru tried calling Eunji, but she didn't answer, and when he got home, she was nowhere to be found. A sense of unease filled his heart. Meanwhile, Jae-hee knew she couldn't stay here much longer and had to find her last hope. When she was still a reporter, she had received exclusive news about Chairman Nam. She immediately went to a hotel to meet a man. He handed her evidence about Chairman Nam's shady fundraising and illegal real estate investments, urging her to publish it to take revenge. However, since she had been involved with Chairman Nam, she refused to help, causing the man to become furious and attempt to assault her. In danger, Jae-hee fought back, grabbing a bottle of liquor and smashing it over his head, then pushing him into the wall, killing him instantly. It was Ma-ru who took the blame and went to prison for 5 years. Back in the present, the evidence about Chairman Nam's illegal investments still lay in Jae-hee's hands. Back to Eungi, she drove to the nearest beach she knew, only to find that it was the same beach from the photo. She took a picture, realizing that this was the place she and Ma-ru were supposed to visit today, but instead, he had chosen Jae-hee over her. Ma-ru was still sitting at home, patiently hoping that Eungi would return. Eunji only sent him a picture of the beach, and he immediately rushed there. Meanwhile, others had their own plans. Jae-hee tightly held a stack of documents. Lawyer Park was plotting revenge for Chairman Nam, and Lawyer An packed his things to flee. Ma-ru arrived at the beach and found Eunji. She didn't mention anything about the past past but simply complimented the view. Maru honestly confessed to her, saying that he had once planned to visit this place with the person he loved, but they never made it. That person was Jae-hee. Maru chose to be truthful, hoping that Eunji would forgive him. Eunji did not disappoint him. She was someone who didn't care much about the past of others. She only wanted to be with Maru in the present. As long as he was honest with her, she would forgive him. Because he truly loved Eunji, Maru didn't want to drag her into his battle, so he heartlessly told her they should part ways. Eungi didn't cry. She just wanted to ask him if everything he had said and done during their time together was real or fake. Was it all part of his plan? Maru's answer was a simple maybe, which caused Eunji to lose her composure. She accepted being foolish and embraced Maru, pleading with him to start fresh somewhere else. She knew that if she followed him, her life would be full of suffering, and Maru coldly responded that he loved Jae-hee, and to win her back, he would do whatever it took. These words pushed Eungi into utter despair. Actually, saying this, Maru had to hold back a lot. In another turn of events, Jae-hee, in order to protect her son, could not let herself lose everything. She brought the documents into the chairman's office and looked him straight in the eyes. This made Chairman Nam lose his temper and yell loudly, triggering a relapse of his heart condition. But that was not all. Jae-hee also showed him the vile things he had done throughout his career. Little did she know, Chairman Nam had been on the phone with Lawyer Park all this time. The conversation between the two of them had been overheard by him. Jae-hee began to scold him, saying that to protect the chairman, she had sacrificed her entire life. She had even given up the man she loved most in the world. But now, he wanted to get rid of her, so she had no choice but to act this way. Jae-hee also told him plainly that the person she had always loved was Maru, which made Chairman Nam even angrier and aggravated his heart condition as he reached for his medicine, only to find it out of reach. Jae-hee picked up the medicine bottle and begged Chairman Nam to divide the assets equally for her son, while she would voluntarily leave his house or accept any punishment he gave her. Jae-hee kept begging, regardless of the fact that Chairman Nam could not respond due to his heart attack. In the end, he died right then and there. Lawyer Park, who overheard the conversation, was utterly shocked. Jae-hee tried to call the hospital, but was stopped by Lawyer An. Now that Chairman Nam is dead, not only do they escape death, but they can also seize all of his assets. At first, Jae-hee was stubborn and tried to take out her phone to call. She even screamed for the butler, but Lawyer An quickly reminded her that this was the life she had to sacrifice everything to obtain. If she wanted to keep it now, she had to become a villain. Thinking about her son, Jae-hee slowly began to embrace the dark side. Influenced by Lawyer An, their cruelty had all been overheard by Lawyer Park. He had always been a kind person, but after this, he could never forgive them. Meanwhile, Maru was still sitting on the beach until evening. His life's goal had been ruthlessly chased away by him, and Yoon-gi, heartbroken, was driving home. On the way, she received a message from Lawyer Park informing her of her father's death. This news shocked her so much that she nearly caused an accident. In just one day, both the person she loved and her only family had left her. How could Eun-gi bear such a truth? She turned her car around and unexpectedly encountered Maru's car, also heading home. Without warning, Eun-gi swerved and drove in the opposite direction. She slammed the gas pedal, aiming to crash into Maru's car, and he didn't avoid it. Instead, the corner of his mouth curled into a smile. If this was the punishment she wanted to give him, he was ready to accept it. A loud crash echoed through the air, and soon the news reported Chairman Nam's death, and the traffic accident involving his only daughter was captured by reporters, showing the chaotic scene of the incident. Not long after, someone was handing out flyers searching for Yoon-gi, stating that she was undergoing treatment at the hospital but suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile, Jae-gil was standing in front of someone's grave, crying. Behind him was a group of people calling him Young Master. They told him it was time for him to return home and inherit the company. It turned out that Maru's close friend was actually the heir to a wealthy conglomerate. However, Jae-gil wanted to continue living a normal life, so he refused to return. A year passed, and Eun-gi had still not been found. Of course, all the assets now belonged to Jae-hee, who was accompanied by Lawyer An, while Lawyer Park remained just a small lawyer in the firm. A year ago, Lawyer An had discovered that Chairman Nam was on the phone with Lawyer Park. He immediately grabbed the phone and threatened Lawyer Park, telling him not to call the police, because he had discovered Lawyer Park's weakness. His father was involved in the traffic accident that killed Eun-gi's mother. Now the two of them were on the same side. If Lawyer Park betrayed them, Lawyer An would show Eun-gi the evidence, and then she would no longer trust Lawyer Park, forcing him to keep quiet and cover for them. Returning to the present, Maru was not dead. Instead, he had become a conman, willing to do anything for money, completely indifferent to human emotions. This left both Choco and Jae-gil deeply disappointed. But as night fell, Maru sadly gazed at Yoon-gi's picture, his heart unable to stop thinking about her over the past year. The distance between them was the punishment Yoon-gi had given him. Jae-gil ran in, crying and begging Maru to return to the way he was before. When Jae-hee betrayed him, he remained unchanged. But now, with Yoon-gi missing, why had he become like this? For Maru, losing someone who loved him more than life itself was a wound that would never heal. As for Jae-hee, she had completely transformed, becoming a woman who liked to steal other people's husbands. Eun-gi, who was thought to be dead, was actually still alive, but she had lost all her memories. When the butler took her to the place where Maru once lived, she happily played with a group of children. Though she she couldn't remember anything, the name Maru still lingered in her mind. At that moment, Maru also came out of the house, and seeing her familiar figure, couldn't believe his eyes. After a year of longing for her, now she appeared right in front of him, yet he couldn't accept that this was real. Maru approached Eungi, but when she opened her camera, she didn't recognize him at first. She only knew that they had once known each other, loved and hated each other. Eungi introduced herself, and then said that in the camera, there was only her and him. She asked him what their relationship was, if they had once deeply loved each other. Maru couldn't bring himself to answer this question. If this was the reason God allowed Maru to love Eungi again, he would definitely seize the opportunity. He took Eungi home, where her loyal butler told him that after the accident, Eungi's brain had been damaged, causing her not only to lose her memory, but also to forget everything she had once learned. Now, she was like a child. The butler also explained that if she stayed in the hospital, she would be harmed by Jae-hee, so he had taken her away. He also suspected that Chairman Nam's death was linked to Jae-hee. As for Eungi, the doctor had mentioned that if she could still remember Maru's name, getting her closer to him might help her regain her memories, which is why the butler brought her there. Maru felt unworthy of Eungi, so he bluntly told her that they didn't know each other. But when he saw Jae-hee's brother walking in, afraid that he might tell Jae-hee about Eungi's presence, Maru immediately pulled her into an embrace to keep her face hidden. However, Jae-hee's brother remained curious and came closer. Fortunately, Maru managed to drive him away. Once he left, Maru immediately released Eungi. She asked him if he felt ashamed for pretending not to know her because she was foolish, but Eungi didn't know that Maru stayed there because he hoped she would come back and find him, and he didn't want her to stay there because the place was too easy for Jae-hee to discover. Jae-hee would pose a danger to her. Moreover, Maru didn't have much time left. After the accident, Maru had suffered brain damage with bleeding between his skull and the meninges. If he didn't undergo surgery, he would die, but if he did, there was a high chance he would fall into a coma. Meanwhile, Eungi, hurt by Maru's coldness, still felt her heart race when she was near him. They had definitely once loved each other deeply, but danger was slowly closing in on her. Jae-hee's brother wasn't a fool. He noticed that the woman with Maru was unfamiliar, so he secretly followed her and took a photo. As he left, another car arrived. This time, it was Lawyer Park who came with a rose for Eungi. Lawyer Park was still as gentle and caring towards her as ever. Maru had once said, if there are truly fairies in this world, then why do the wicked still exist, while the good ones fall into tragic fates? Those words echoed in his mind, as they had once been directed at his victims in his deceitful schemes. When Maru returned home, he found a note from Eungi. It said, if you miss me, contact me at this number. Maru took the note and went inside, only to learn that his sister had returned all the dirty money he had made to the victims' families. Choco didn't want him to harm others just to heal her. Jae-gil couldn't accept the person Maru had become, so he left him too. Maru, feeling lonely, held on to the note Eungi left, but couldn't bring himself to call her. Meanwhile, Eungi was in imminent danger. Jae-hee's brother had shown the video he took of her to Lawyer On. Jae-hee's brother agreed to reveal Eungi's location in exchange for a luxury apartment. Jae-hee, constantly anxious, had been temporarily filling in for Eungi, who had disappeared for a year. If Eungi returned, she would lose everything. Lawyer On, who was deeply infatuated with Jae-hee, would certainly protect her. He sent Jae-hee's brother to Eungi's house to eliminate her. Jae-hee's brother arrived and lied, claiming to be Maru's older brother. He then tricked Eungi into believing that Maru wanted to meet her to talk, so she should come with him. Just a few words related to Maru were enough to convince Eungi. She quickly went inside to dress up beautifully and then got into the car with him. When the butler returned and found Eungi missing, he rushed to Maru's house to seek help. Upon hearing that Eungi was gone, Maru became immediately worried. The butler explained that he had just gone to the market, and when he returned, Eungi had disappeared. Maru quickly suspected Jae-hee's brother. At that moment, Jae-hee's brother was already calling a trafficker to sell Eungi. Maru tried calling, but the man wouldn't pick up. Suddenly, the butler had an idea. They could track Eungi's phone. Maru, losing his composure, immediately drove off, following the phone's location. Fortunately, Jae-hee's brother wasn't very clever. Even after kidnapping someone, he had time to use the restroom and buy a children's book, which allowed Maru to catch up. Eungi was currently at this location, so he searched for each car, but still let Jae-hee's brother drive away. Anyone who dared to harm the woman Maru loved would not be forgiven. He immediately revved his engine and chased after Jae-hee's brother's car. Maru honked his horn trying to wake Eungi, but she couldn't stay awake, forcing him to accelerate and race ahead to block Jae-hee's brother's car. Eungi woke up and smiled as soon as she saw him. Maru immediately wanted to teach Jae-hee's brother a lesson, but Eungi stopped him. She thought the man only wanted to take her to meet him. Maru angrily scolded her for being foolish, following anyone who invited her. What if she got into danger? Being called foolish made Eungi's heart ache. She became more certain that it was because she was stupid that he hated her and didn't want to see her anymore. Eungi apologized and promised she wouldn't bother him again. She took a taxi home, crying uncontrollably. She just wanted to love, but her love as a fool was worthless. Meanwhile, Maru was deeply troubled, not knowing what to do to save Eungi. At that moment, Jae-hee had learned of the true owner of the corporation. If Eungi continued to live, all her efforts would be in vain. She was the one who suggested to her brother to sell Eungi into a prostitution ring. Then, she would give her brother a large house. After returning home, Eungi was deeply sad saddened. She didn't blame Maru, but only blamed herself for losing her memories. Jaehee's brother failed to sell Eunji, but continued to lie, claiming he had taken care of her. He then demanded more money from Jaehee. However, she gave him only a police siren, knowing that her brother had completely lost his humanity. To him, she wasn't a sister, but a money machine. Once he got money once, he'd come back for more. Jaehee decided it was best to deal with him now before he caused further trouble, but her brother quickly fled before the police arrived. The next morning, Biguk found Maru and knelt before him, pleading for forgiveness and asking for help. He also revealed that all the plans were made by Jaehee. Maru felt an overwhelming sense of danger for Eungi. He recalled the butler's warning that Jaehee, who had even killed Chairman Nam, would not hesitate to harm Eungi. Now he needed to do something to protect the woman he loved. He asked Biguk for Eungi's address and immediately rushed to her location. Meanwhile, Lawyer An's subordinates had found Eungi's home, which was also the butler's residence. This made Eungi's situation even more dangerous. While Maru was driving the butler, they encountered one of Lawyer An's men. The butler grew alarmed and asked Maru to take her and Eungi and hide them immediately. However, when Maru tried to get closer to Eungi, she pushed him away. She had been hurt too much and didn't want to see him anymore. The situation was dire. The butler sent a message to Lawyer Park, warning him that Eungi had been found. At the same time, the butler was intercepted by one of Jaehee's secretary, who also called reinforcements to ensure Eungi would be captured. Eungi locked herself in her room, ignoring Maru's urgent knocks, urging her to escape. She kept repeating his harsh words, reminding herself that he had told her not to go with strangers. Maru had no choice but to swallow his pride to convince her. He admitted that they had once loved each other deeply and began recounting their beautiful memories together. Eungi, listening from inside, began to waver. Finally, when she heard his sincere apology, she opened the door, accepting his offer to leave with him. However, outside, the company's people had surrounded the house under the guise of taking the CEO out, trying to enter the butler's house. Thankfully, Lawyer Park arrived just in time to stop them. Since his position in the company was higher than theirs, they dared not act aggressively. When Lawyer Park entered the room to visit Eungi, she had already left with Maru. Now that they had some space to themselves, Maru continued to reminisce about the past. Eungi, still angry, remained silent, pretending she didn't want to hear him, but Maru kept going, recounting everything without care. Later that night, Maru brought Eungi back to his home. Jae-gil, being the good friend he was, told Eungi how much Maru had missed and loved her. Meanwhile, Maru was busy packing his things. He had planned to move in with Eungi, his sister, and his best friend. The reason he hadn't moved earlier was that he had been waiting for Eungi to come back. Now that she was here, there was no need to stay in the dangerous place any longer. Before they left, Lawyer Park asked to meet Maru. He made it clear that he didn't want Maru to be around Eungi, using her to seek revenge on his ex-girlfriend. But when Maru decided to help Eungi, Lawyer Park agreed to hand her over to him once again. When Jaehee returned to find Maru, she discovered that the house was empty. The woman Maru was now willing to risk his life to protect was Eungi, the girl who had once loved him more than her own life. He would do everything in his power to help Eungi reclaim what was rightfully hers. Sometime later, during Jaehee's official inauguration ceremony, she hadn't even managed to smile when Eungi made her return. Eungi appeared confidently before the press, leaving Jaehee in panic. Despite being shocked, Jaehee still had to play the role of the kind stepmother, waiting for her daughter to return in front of the media. When Eungi came back, the main seats had to be given up for her. Both the position of president and all the assets now belonged to Eungi. All of Jaehee's hard work and efforts over the past year were rendered useless in an instant. When Eungi gave her speech, she directly named Maru as the person who would help her in her work, which shocked Jaehee even more. At the end of the press conference, Jaehee still couldn't believe this reality. Why was everything she had worked for over the past year now completely in vain? But she had forgotten that the company and wealth she tried to steal were accumulated over generations by Eungi's family, not just from her one-year contribution. As for why Eungi, who had lost her memory, was able to return to normal like this, it was because everything had been planned by Maru and Lawyer Park from the start. Even the words Eungi said today were written by Maru for her to memorize. Eungi was simply following instructions, not understanding why she needed to fight for the company in the first place. Now that she had regained her identity, Eungi had to frequently meet with Jaehee, and Maru was by her side, meaning he had to meet Jaehee more often. However, he no longer cared much about her. At this point, he had little time left, so while he could still live, he had to use all his talent and strength to help Eungi. Meanwhile, Eungi's diary ended up in the hands of Lawyer An. He had previously visited the house of the butler and took the opportunity to steal her diary, so now he knew that Eungi was essentially like a fool, entrusting everything to Maru to handle. Therefore, he arranged to meet Eungi and demanded to speak with her alone, sending the butler away. Afterward, he handed her the diary and asked what it was and why it was at the butler's house. While Eungi claimed she had been recovering at a distant location, she trembled but knew how to respond. She explained that the diary had been used for treatment after the accident, and now she was healed. However, Lawyer Aang insisted that she prove to him that she had truly recovered. If he could gather evidence that Eungi was still affected by the accident, it would mean she lost the ability to run the company, and Jaehee would continue to take over. He then used psychological manipulation, claiming that he was a loyal servant of Chairman Nam. He urged Eungi to trust him and speak freely, assuring her that she could tell him everything. However, Eungi was very obedient to Ma Ru and didn't dare to trust anyone else. She wrote down the words, "He is a bad person," to prove that she wasn't as foolish as he thought, then stood up and left. As she stepped outside, she seemed to recall the memory of selling her mother's resort, and she realized that he was indeed a bad person. Returning to Maru, he truly was very intelligent, diligent, and gifted with a brilliant mind. During the meeting, he refuted Jae-hee's arguments and effectively persuaded the shareholders, earning their respect and recognition of his abilities. This made Lawyer Park feel more confident in trusting Ma Ru. After handling the company matters, Ma Ru returned home and accidentally overheard a conversation between his sister and Eungi. Chako asked if Eungi had gone on a trip with her brother, but Eungi was saddened because she couldn't remember. She then added that if they were alone, she would feel too shy. This made her incredibly endearing in Ma Ru's eyes, and to make up for the past, he took her to the beach the next morning. When Eungi woke up, she was amazed by the beautiful scenery around her. She wondered if she had been carried onto the car while she was asleep the previous night. Ma Ru admitted to it. The feeling was exactly as Choko had said. Traveling with just the two of them was very enjoyable. It didn't matter if the place wasn't particularly beautiful or lively, as long as they were together. Even a desolate place could become joyful and happy. One person had lost her memory, and the other was about to leave this world. Why is their love so tragic? When Ma Ru was driving Eungi back, the headlights from an oncoming car shone into her eyes, causing her to remember something, a very terrible memory. Eungi wondered if she had hurt Ma Ru. That painful memory was something Eungi couldn't remember, nor should she. After their outing, Eungi went to the kitchen herself to learn how to cook, so she could make breakfast for the man she loved. However, just as everything seemed perfect, the police arrived, interrupting their happy moment. Lawyer An and Jae-hee had teamed up to accuse Ma Ru of trying to approach Eungi in the past in order to take over the company. They had carefully planned everything, and after a search, they found a chip, something they believed was evidence that Ma Ru had stolen confidential company data. They wanted to take him to the police station, but strangely, Ma Ru remained calm. He told them that he needed to have the first breakfast prepared by his lover before he left. Eungi was anxious, but Ma Ru remained optimistic, so the police had to wait outside while he finished his meal. Inside, Eungi was worried to the point of tears, but Ma Ru reassured her, saying that all they had to do was clear his name. His way of clearing his name was to call Jae-hee. Afterward, he told the police that he would only go with them once they brought a formal arrest warrant. With that, he confidently drove off, infuriating the police. Ma Ru went to meet Jae-hee and asked what she intended to do. Just as Jae-hee had been arrogantly triumphant, she received a phone call informing her that Ma Ru had turned the tables and accused her instead. Jae-hee turned back and asked him what he intended to do with her. She then accused him of leaking company secrets, hiding a chip containing a confidential project in the drawer. Ma Ru asked how she knew it was hidden in the drawer, clearly pointing out the flaw in her plan. He told her that although he hadn't received formal education, his IQ was far higher than hers, though high IQ couldn't compare to Jae-hee's cruelty. She then claimed to have evidence that Ma Ru had previously scammed someone, threatening to use it to have him imprisoned for a long time. Jae-hee told him to give up everything and leave, promising she would spare his life. But if he went to prison, she warned him that his sister and Eungi would be left in a difficult position. Daring to use the two people Ma Ru loved most as leverage made him visibly angry for the first time. Fortunately, at the critical moment, a benefactor appeared to support Ma Ru. That person was Lawyer Park, who held a recording of the incriminating conversation between Jae-hee and Lawyer An, where they discussed the murder of Chairman Nam. He used this as leverage to threaten Lawyer An, telling him to stop scheming against Ma Ru, or he wouldn't hesitate to betray him. Lawyer A and had tried to use the story of Lawyer Park's father to control him, but this tactic had become useless. For love, Lawyer Park was willing to expose this secret. With no other option, Lawyer An was forced to notify Jae-hee that she should drop the lawsuit, or both of them would end up in prison. Upon hearing the news, Jae-hee had no choice but to call the prosecution to cancel the lawsuit. Ma Ru successfully avoided the prison sentence, but surprisingly, he didn't need it. He requested the prosecutor to continue the investigation because he hadn't committed the crime. At the same time, Ma Ru admitted that in the past, he had indeed deceived others, but he no longer wanted Jae-hee to use this weakness to threaten him again. The police officers, who still had a conscience, listened to Ma Ru. He told them that he had lived for his sister, and now, with another woman in his life, he had a reason to believe in life again. Therefore, they decided not to investigate his past fraud and promised to restore fairness to Ma Ru. However, when he returned home, he was frantic to find that Eungi was missing. In fact, she had gone to the house where she had once lived, trying to regain her memories. Jae-hee's son was overjoyed to see his sister and insisted on pulling her into the house, leaving Eungi feeling awkward. Not wanting to disappoint the child, she followed him inside, but despite recognizing the familiar objects, she couldn't recall any memories. However, she was charmed by the adorable little brother, and since she had left her phone at home, Ma Ru and his sister had to rush outside to look for her. At that moment, Jae-hee returned home and was stunned to see Eungi there. She was shocked because, in the past, Eungi had despised her son, but now, she was playing with the child. Jae-hee's lonely son smiled at Eungi, which made her hesitate for a moment. Yet, her nature was something that couldn't be easily immediately changed. Jae-hee knew that Eun-gi was allergic to seafood, but she still served her shellfish. The housemaid, who had taken care of Eun-gi since she was little, noticed the allergic reaction when Eun-gi started developing a rash. This made Jae-hee realize that Eun-gi still hadn't regained her memory. As soon as Eun-gi went to the bathroom, Jae-hee instructed the housemaid to bring out a plate of flounder, another dish that Eun-gi was allergic to. Fortunately, Maru arrived just in time to find Eun-gi taking allergy medication. He quickly understood that Jae-hee was trying to test Eun-gi in this way. However, Maru didn't know exactly what Eun-gi was allergic to, and before he could stop it, Jae-hee pushed the plate of fish toward Eun-gi. Eun-gi didn't remember being allergic to it, so she took a bite. Luckily, the housemaid came running in to inform Jae-hee that her son had suddenly started vomiting, which distracted her from focusing on Eun-gi's allergy. Jae-hee rushed to her son's side, no longer concerned about Eun-gi. The boy asked his mother to keep Eun-gi around to play with him, and Jae-hee pretended to agree, hoping to test Eun-gi further. However, Eun-gi and Maru left, leaving behind a note with a sarcastic tone, exactly how Eun-gi used to act, which made Jae-hee uneasy. The next day, Jae-hee met Maru at the company, where he subtly threatened her by revealing that there were cameras around his house. He made it clear that anyone who sneaked into his house to plant the USB stick and frame him would soon be found out. This left Jae-hee and Lawyer An feeling uneasy and worried. Having lost to Maru, Jae-hee, now angry, sought out Eun-gi to have a conversation. Seeing her at the door, Eun-gi became worried and informed Maru. He hurriedly instructed her to wait for him and not open the door for Jae-hee. However, Eun-gi no longer wanted to hide behind Maru, so she opened the door for Jae-hee. Jae-hee apologized for not knowing about Eun-gi's allergy the other day, and she brought over dishes that Eun-gi supposedly liked. It was clear that Jae-hee didn't actually know what Eun-gi liked. She just wanted to test if Eun-gi had truly lost her memory. Knowing that Choco and Jae-gil were not home, she began to try to drive a wedge between Eun-gi and Maru. Jae-hee told Eun-gi that she had once lived with Maru's family for a long time, gradually manipulating her emotions. Jae-hee suggested that Eun-gi distance herself from Maru and return to live with her. She wanted Eun-gi to get along with her son and show respect toward her. Every word Jae-hee spoke triggered fragmented memories for Eun-gi, none of them good. Jae-hee realized that Eun-gi had completely forgotten her past with Maru. Seeing Eun-gi's pale face, she suggested taking her to the hospital. But then, Eun-gi recalled what Lawyer Park had said, that Maru approached her to take advantage of her and seek revenge on his stepmother. Overcome by the emotional turmoil, Eun-gi collapsed to the floor. At that moment, Maru arrived. He pushed Jae-hee aside to check on Eun-gi, and seeing her condition, angrily told Jae-hee to leave. It was the first time Maru had harshly scolded Jae-hee, and she felt a sense of loss. Maru then took Eun-gi to the hospital, staying by her side, deeply concerned. Lawyer Park, upon hearing that Eun-gi had fainted, rushed to the hospital. However, when he saw that Maru was by her side, he stopped in his tracks. Out of love, Lawyer Park chose to step back, quietly nursing his heartbreak. It wasn't just him who was heartbroken. Jae-hee was also in pain from love. In her solitude, only Lawyer An would be there for her. Jae-hee confided in Lawyer An that she suspected Eun-gi had lost her memory, and that her condition wasn't simply due to poor health. Lawyer An suggested that if they found concrete evidence, they could challenge Eun-gi's right to inheritance, as she might not be deemed fit for it. At the hospital, Eun-gi had regained consciousness, but she was terrified when she saw Maru lying next to her. She wondered if he had deceived her. When Maru woke up and noticed she was gone, he panicked and immediately went looking for her. Eventually, he found her lying on a bench outside the hospital. He shook her awake, worried she might catch a cold, then scolded her angrily for not taking care of her health. However, Eun-gi pushed his hand away and asked him who he was, signaling that she wanted Maru to honestly tell her about their past. Maru was at a loss for words, and Eun-gi, frustrated, walked off. He anxiously chased after her, asking what had happened, but Eun-gi, still upset, pushed his hand away once again. With no other choice, she walked ahead, and Maru followed her to protect her. The streets were indeed dangerous, and without him, Eun-gi almost got hit by a car. Maru brought Eun-gi back home, but when she saw the photo of him and Jae-hee together, she went into a fit of rage. When Maru tried to comfort her, she scolded him for lying, and the pain was evident on his face. The next morning, Jae-hee came looking for Eun-gi again, but Choco stopped her at the door. Choco knew that this woman was the one who had driven Eun-gi to madness. In the past, Jae-hee and Choco had been as close as sisters, but now, being treated coldly, Jae-hee was a little disappointed. She admitted that she had made a mistake in thinking that money could buy happiness, and now all she felt was loneliness. So, when Maru came out, she immediately made it clear that she wanted him back by her side. However, at this moment, Maru's heart belonged only to Eun-gi. He angrily confronted Jae-hee, demanding to know what she had done to cause Eun-gi to faint. He even grabbed her by the neck and pushed her against the wall, warning her that he would do anything to protect Eun-gi. But Jae-hee claimed that Maru didn't truly love Eun-gi, but only felt guilty and wanted to atone for his sins. That wasn't love. Love was what Maru had given her. Only now, after losing it, did she realize how precious it was. In fact, all of this was a lie created by Jae-hee to manipulate Maru. She had a larger plan behind the scenes. She intended to exploit Eun-gi's memory loss to take control of the company and Lawyer A, and had obtained a CD containing Eun-gi's brain scan. This proves that she truly has lost her memory and is no longer capable of inheriting the vast fortune. As Jae-hee is as her guardian, she will naturally have access to all the assets. The situation is dire, but Yoonji is still upset with Ma-ru. He shows her what it means to love. He brings her a glass of juice, but she knocks it over. He brings her a second glass, and she knocks that over as well. Ma-ru then replaces the juice with milk and offers it to her, only for her to coldly knock it over too. However, Ma-ru doesn't get angry or raise his voice. He patiently prepares another glass and tries to offer it again. At that moment, Eunji accidentally cuts her hand. Ma-ru gently applies medicine to her wound, and as he does, he tells her that he's happy she's angry. He knows that she must be feeling very uncomfortable inside, so it's good for her to release all that negativity. He knows that she must have remembered something about him, and he encourages her to face those memories instead of running away, as doing so will help her remember more. Ma-ru continues to prepare more milk, and when he returns, he finds Eungi crying loudly. He carefully places the glass of milk nearby and gently tells her that when she finishes crying, he hopes she will drink it. Eungi's loud sobs and her headache are the tragedy of their love story. After she stops crying, Eunji drinks the milk that Ma-ru gave her. The next morning, as Ma-ru is preparing breakfast for Eunji, she smiles and asks him if he slept well. In reality, she has forgotten everything that happened the day before and thinks it was just a dream. She goes to see Lawyer Park and tells him that she had a dream, or perhaps that was just a fragment of a memory, about how Ma-ru had used her to take revenge on someone. Eunji wanted to ask Lawyer Park if this was true. Lawyer Park, not wanting to see her suffer, denied the matter. He explained that Eunji had simply been too stressed and had confused a dream with a memory. At the same time, Jae-hee once again came to see Ma-ru, begging him to return to her. She reached out her hand, hoping he would take it, but Ma-ru firmly rejected her. He told her that he no longer wanted anything to do with her, not even as a friend. Jae-hee, desperate, even tried to kneel and beg him, but Ma-ru coldly told her that he found her utterly disgusting. Eventually, Jae-hee admitted that Ma-ru had changed. If she couldn't have him, she would destroy him. She instructed Lawyer On to speed up the process of finding more evidence to prove that Eunji was now useless. However, unexpectedly, Eunji appeared right in front of Jae-hee. She announced that she would be returning to work at the company, and then shared her intentions with Ma-ru. She was going back to confront everything and find her memories, no longer hiding behind him. Eunji's return made Jae-hee very uneasy, so she devised a plan to force Eunji to meet with an old investor to discuss a project that Eunji had once been in charge of but had abandoned. Since she had no recollection of her past, Ma-ru advised her to refuse the matter, but Eunji stubbornly insisted on challenging herself. She decided that if she couldn't remember, she would learn everything from scratch, trying her best to memorize all the information about the investor. Finally, the meeting time arrived. Eungi entered with confidence, but as soon as she spoke, the atmosphere became awkward. It was clear that this was a trap set by Jae-hee for Eunji. She was meeting someone else, not the old investor, and after being provided with incorrect information, the guest assumed that Eunji had shown him disrespect and walked away. This was exactly what Jae-hee wanted. The man was a major investor, and Eunji, as the chairwoman, had let a great opportunity slip by. This would surely lead to a lack of support from the shareholders. At that point, Jae-hee would have even more control over the company. After Eunji's failure, Jae-hee called her, scolding her harshly. She claimed that Eunji was useless and arrogant, ruining the company's business as soon as she returned. Eunji wanted to argue, questioning why the investor had been changed, but Ma-ru snatched the phone away and hung up. He knew it was a malicious trap, and no matter what Eunji said, she would end up losing. This plot succeeded, and Lawyer On informed Jae-hee that the news of Eunji ruining the company's investment had reached the shareholders. During the upcoming meeting, if they presented evidence that she lacked civil capacity, her inheritance rights would be revoked. Eunji, being framed, became extremely insecure about herself. She too believed she was useless, but Ma-ru wouldn't allow her to think of herself that way. Anyone could look down on her, but she could never despise herself. He drove her to the investor's house and encouraged her to face it alone, with no personal information and no rehearsed lines. Eungi stood frozen in fear, but the investor ignored her and got into his car. To his surprise, Eunji was determined to wait for him until late at night. When the investor returned, he was taken aback by Eunji's perseverance, but he still ignored her and went into his house. Ma-ru stood off to the side, deeply moved by his girlfriend's resolve. Eunji remained firm, and eventually, the investor came out to meet her. She could only apologize sincerely and plead with him. Seeing her determination, the investor finally agreed to talk. He questioned how someone who had lost their civil capacity could convince him to invest in them. Eunji confidently assured him that she would recover. The investor didn't reply, simply turning his back and heading into his house. His silence was, in fact, an answer. The next morning, the investor called Jae-hee, telling her that he was willing to transfer the investment project to Eunji. Jae-hee immediately sensed the danger. She quickly convened an emergency board meeting, aiming to expel Eunji from the company before she succeeded. Just as Jae-hee was about to announce the news about Eunji's memory loss, a piece of paper was handed to her. Inside was a note revealing that Jae-hee had planned to kidnap Eunji. She became panicked and immediately halted the meeting. As she stepped outside, she encountered her brother, B-guk, who told her that he had already confessed to Ma-ru everything, including her plan to kidnap Eunji. B-guk also warned her on Ma-ru's behalf, asking if she needed him to reveal to everyone that she had committed murder, with Ma-ru taking the blame for her. Jae-hee stood in silence, paralyzed paralyzed with fear. She returned to the meeting and nominated Eun-ji alongside herself as the co-chair of the board. And though she reluctantly made this move, Jae-hee couldn't hide her resentment and still felt defeated. After the meeting, she waited for Ma-ru, desperately begging him to come back to her. She even promised to give up everything to be with him. But Ma-ru just smiled and replied that he could return to her only to ensure Eun-ji's safety. But his return would be nothing more than a cold, emotionless Ma-ru. This made it clear that Ma-ru's heart no longer belonged to her, leaving her devastated. Lawyer An, who had been observing from a distance, heard everything. He grabbed Jae-hee's hand and urged her to regain her composure. He questioned if she was really willing to give up everything she had sacrificed her honor for, in exchange for something she had discarded in the past. But love, he said, was something that could never be easily let go of. Jae-hee, with a broken heart, returned to her old house, while Eun-ji continued her struggle to regain her lost memories. Ma-ru had brought Eun-ji to her old house, but the two of them only stood in front of the gate and didn't go inside. Inside, Jae-hee was reflecting on the happiness she had once had, now lost. Ma-ru didn't take Eun-ji inside. Instead, he drove her to the top of a mountain where she had once said goodbye to him. Eun-ji still couldn't remember anything. On the way back, she asked Ma-ru if they had ever kissed before. Ma-ru replied no, which left Eun-ji feeling disappointed. She let go of his hand because in her memory, they had shared a deep love, yet they hadn't even shared a single kiss. Both of them couldn't sleep that night. Eun-ji was sad and Ma-ru was troubled. Ma-ru's teasing kept him awake. At 2 a.m., went to his room to wake him up and took him to the company to teach her about economics. So, at 2 a.m., the two of them were at the office, tirelessly studying. They were determined to keep going, but Eun-ji eventually fell asleep without realizing it. They even called each other while brushing their teeth to study, as time was running out to prove her abilities. But just then, another complication arose. Lawyer Park called Ma-ru to inform him that they had discovered 30 billion won in embezzled funds transferred to Eun-gi's account. This was because, when Eun-ji had disappeared, Jae-hee had used her account to hide the black funds for herself. Now, with the prosecution investigating, they suspected that Eun-ji's year-long disappearance was linked to some shady dealings. Ma-ru was furious. He had allowed Jae-hee to go unchallenged, but she seemed determined to keep stirring up trouble. He chose not to tell Eun-ji about this. Ma-ru was determined to resolve the trouble for Eun-ji. He approached the company's chief accountant, falsely claiming he had evidence proving that the accountant had forged documents to embezzle company funds. The accountant, believing Ma-ru, became fearful. Ma-ru gave him a day to think it over, after which, the accountant would provide him the documents showing that it was Jae-hee who had embezzled the funds and transferred them into Eun-gi's account. However, Ma-ru was unaware that, as he left, Lawyer An's men, along with some thugs, approached the accountant. Lawyer An was a schemer who could not allow Ma-ru to interfere with Jae-hee's success, especially since he harbored feelings for her. When he learned that Jae-hee still loved Ma-ru, his jealousy grew, and he was determined to make Ma-ru disappear from her life. He acted swiftly, and by the next morning, the police came to arrest Ma-ru on suspicion of murdering the accountant, leaving everyone at Ma-ru's home in shock. Eun-ji immediately called Ma-ru to inform him about the police's accusations. Ma-ru explained that he had been framed and that he couldn't afford to be caught by the police. Eun-ji couldn't sit still either and went to Lawyer Park for help. It was then that she learned Ma-ru had gone to the accountant because of her and that he had been wrongfully accused as a result. She felt incredibly guilty. Lawyer Park told her that Ma-ru did this for her, but he had not explained why. Meanwhile, when Jae-hee arrived at the company, she saw the police investigating Ma-ru's whereabouts. She was shocked to realize that he was now a suspect in a police manhunt. Jae-hee, after asking her secretary, was shocked to learn that Ma-ru had beaten the company's accountant into a coma, almost killing him. What surprised her even more was that Ma-ru was now hiding in her office bathroom. With genuine concern, Jae-hee asked why he had killed someone, but Ma-ru misunderstood, thinking she was the one who had framed him. He accused her of setting him up and pretending not to know anything. Jae-hee, distressed, tried to explain herself, but in the middle of their conversation, she received a call from Lawyer An, asking if Ma-ru was there. Jae-hee quickly denied it, but the police immediately barged in and arrested Ma-ru. She had no idea how to explain the situation. The call wasn't from her. She hadn't called the police. With Ma-ru taken away, Jae-hee scolded Lawyer An for not informing her beforehand, but he shrugged it off, saying it was his style of working. He also mentioned that Jae-hee was wavering and it was his job to keep her stable. Jae-hee began to feel afraid of this madman. Even though he was doing everything to help her, his methods were extreme. At this moment, Eun-gi burst in, offering to hand over the company and all her assets to Jae-hee, just so she wouldn't harm Ma-ru anymore. Jae-hee, envious of their love, asked Eun-ji why she would be willing to give up everything for a man. Even though she already knew the answer, because of love, Jae-hee too was willing to give up everything for Ma-ru. But the truth was, he no longer loved her, and now she wanted to tear apart the bond between Eun-ji and Ma-ru. Jae-hee, unable to tolerate Ma-ru's closeness to Eun-ji, resorted to using money and personal gain to manipulate Eun-ji's ex-boyfriend, Ma-sang, who had just returned from America. She hoped he could persuade Eun-gi to return to him. Ma-sang immediately approached Eun-ji, presenting a photo of the two of them from the past and reminiscing about their happy times together. However, unexpectedly, these memories didn't make Eun-ji recall him, but instead made her remember her past with Ma-ru. She recalled a moment when she stood in the rain, telling him that she loved loved him deeply. Seeing Eunji lost in thought, Ma-sun thought she had agreed to come back to him, so he confidently took her hand and smiled. But his smile faded when Eunji told him to let go of her hand. At the same time, Lawyer Park visited Ma-ru and reminded him of their prior agreement. If Eunji regained her old position, Ma-ru would have to distance himself from her. But now, Ma-ru didn't want to leave her. He didn't mind being seen as someone who broke a promise, just to stay by her side. Lawyer Park, however, made it clear that as a lawyer, he would take action against anyone who violated a contract or promise. On the other hand, Jae-hee couldn't let Ma-ru go to prison, so she ordered her people to find the true culprit to clear his name. Lawyer An, upon hearing the news, could only smile helplessly. That evening, Ma-ru was released and Eunji came to pick him up. But when they were alone, she scolded him, calling him a liar, which made him worry. In the past, nothing ever scared him, but now, because he loved Eunji, Ma-ru feared that if Eunji knew everything, she might not stay with him. But Eunji continued, asking why he had told her before that they had never kissed. Her words made him feel embarrassed, but it was at that moment that he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. If it had been in the past, he would have wanted her to regain her memories, even if it meant her resenting him for what he had done. But now, he wished she would forget everything so that he could stay by her side and protect her. And so, he kissed Eungi, a kiss that spoke louder than words, expressing his love for her. Meanwhile, Jae-hee, sitting in a car nearby, witnessed this scene. Her emotions were a complex mix of anger, sadness, resentment, and humiliation. Eunji then took Ma-ru to their old house, the place where she had first confessed her love for him. She expressed how happy she was to remember those precious moments, recalling how her family had once talked about her marrying Ma-ru and living together as a family. This only deepened Ma-ru's fears. If she recalled all the painful memories, would she leave him? Suddenly, Eunji asked if they could get married. She wanted to marry him, and Ma-ru immediately agreed. Out of love, he chose to be selfish and deceive her once more, hiding the truth that he had once taken advantage of her. Eungi, happy, pulled Ma-ru to a wedding dress shop, telling him which dress she liked. After choosing the dress, she excitedly talked about their wedding venue and plans to start a family. They would have enough children to form a soccer team and send them off to tournaments in the future. When it comes to selfish love, we must mention Lawyer An. He loves Jae-hee and is always there whenever she's in danger, even going so far as to attack anyone who dares to bother her while she drinks. However, Jae-hee seems to only regret her relationship with Ma-ru. She questions if she still truly loves him or if it's just a feeling of regret, especially since she knows she may never find someone who loves her like Ma-ru did. After a night walk, Ma-ru and Eungi returned home. Ma-ru continued trying to focus on his work, but Jae-gil suddenly burst in. He had found out about Ma-ru's terminal illness and began crying in distress, which scared Ma-ru, fearing that the whole family would find out. Jae-gil, in his pain, wanted to shout it out, but Ma-ru quickly covered his mouth. He didn't want Eungi or Choco to know about his condition. Ma-ru's only wish was to spend his last moments with his loved ones. The greatest happiness for him was lying on a soft mattress, hearing the laughter and chatter of his family, and being kissed on the forehead by the one he loved as a way to greet the new day. He wished that these beautiful, joyful moments could last forever. On the other hand, Jae-hee's mornings were solitary. She had fine dining, but the atmosphere was cold and lonely, with her shameful brother constantly causing trouble. If it weren't for growing up in an environment where her father and brother didn't treat her like a person, would Jae-hee have become so power-hungry? But now, she had chosen power, and she had to hold on to it, no matter the cost. She wasn't afraid at all, and immediately spread the news that Eunji had lost her memory. However, at the same time, Lawyer Park had agreed to let Ma-ru and Eunji have a fake marriage. This way, Ma-ru could legally become her husband and guardian. Jae-hee couldn't accept this news. She continued to run to Ma-ru, pleading with him not to marry Eunji, but Ma-ru pulled his hand away and told her that he was no longer the same. The only person who could make him keep living now was Eungi. Without her by his side, he wouldn't be able to continue as a person. Jae-hee began to regret spreading the news about Eunji and thought about revealing all the truths from the past to destroy their wedding, but her conversation was interrupted when Lawyer Park walked by. He took Eunji away. Even though it was just a fake marriage, Eunji was still happy. She hoped to have a real wedding with the person she loved soon, which made Lawyer Park feel heartbroken. He handed Eunji a file containing questions she might be asked during the upcoming meeting regarding the rumors about her memory loss. But at that moment, Eunji asked Lawyer Park about a vague memory she had. She once drove in the wrong direction and crashed into another car. Was this true? Ma-ru, who was sitting next to her, became very anxious. He thought to himself, could it be that she had remembered something? To prevent Eunji from suffering, Lawyer Park lied, telling her that the woman she had hit in the car accident was now recovered and living abroad with her family. However, when Eunji returned to her office, someone handed her the case file from the accident, and the name of the victim on it was Ma-ru. This revelation shocked Eungi deeply. Her memory returned in full this time, and it was clear that Ma-ru was the one she had hit. She collapsed to the floor in despair, asking herself why she had done that to him and why Lawyer Park had lied to her. But when Ma-ru arrived, Eunji still tried to maintain her composure, smiling at him. On the way to the meeting, more memories flooded back to Eunji, especially the time at the beach when Ma-ru had cruelly told her that the one he needed was Jae-hee, not her. Ma-ru had placed his hand on her shoulder, a gesture that now made her remember that he had had done the same before and said he would do anything to get Jae-hee back. When the meeting began, Eunji surprised everyone by not following the prepared script. Instead, she directly admitted that she had lost her memory. She also announced that she would give up her position as chairwoman of the company, but not leave the company. She would prove her worth and show that she deserved the role, leaving everyone in the room in disbelief. Jae-hee was completely bewildered by Eungi's actions, but after the meeting, Maru praised her for being brave. He told her that this was the Eunji he had once known, the one he had fallen in love with. He asked her what she liked, and Eunji replied with flowers, handbags, bubble tea, and a kiss. Without waiting any longer, Maru went to buy all the things Eunji loved. However, he secretly bought a pair of rings for an engagement proposal, wanting to make it complete. He waited at their meeting spot, but Eungi didn't show up. At that moment, she was standing in front of her father's portrait. It was her first time visiting this place, and she told her father she regretted following someone who had taken advantage of her, leaving her unable to see him one last time. It took her a whole year to return. Eungi now remembered how Maru had used her, and she despised him, as well as herself for being so foolish. She decided that she would silently take advantage of his love for her, just as he had done to her, seeking revenge. When Eunji arrived at the meeting spot, everything she had requested was laid out on the bench by Maru. He didn't blame her for being late. Instead, he gently cupped her face in his hands. The fourth gift, as Eunji had requested, was a passionate kiss. However, to Eunji, it felt like a kiss of deceit. The following morning, Eunji opened the pages of her journal. Inside were expressions of love, heartfelt declarations she had written for Maru. But now, she hated the words on those pages. The scariest part was that she didn't show her feelings on the outside. She slowly descended the stairs and embraced Maru. Eunji didn't tell Maru that she had remembered everything. He asked her if she wanted to go somewhere far away, a place where no one knew them, where they could start over. Eunji agreed, making Maru incredibly happy. He went to their room and placed the engagement ring box on the table for her. However, he was startled to find a torn page from her journal on the floor. The pages contained words of love she had written for him, and Maru feared that Eungi had remembered everything. What shocked him even more was the file about the accident, which he had placed on her table. In his love for her, Maru had both wanted her to forget everything, but also hoped that she would find herself again and make her own decision about whether to forgive him. Even though she was no longer the chairperson to hide everything from everyone, Eunji still allowed the wedding to take place. When Lawyer Park showed her the wedding invitations, she happily called Maru to ask if he had seen them. Maru knew Eunji was lying, which meant she no longer trusted him. This was the result of his fear that she might never forgive him. Eunji then went to see Jae-hee, hoping she would play the role of a mother at her wedding. Although Jae-hee didn't want to, she reluctantly agreed. Eunji smiled, but the more her smile brightened, the deeper her resentment grew. Eunji even dragged Jae-hee to pick out a wedding dress with her, tormenting Jae-hee's heart every step of the way. When Eunji went to the bathroom, Jae-hee seized Maru's hand. Jae-hee misunderstood that Maru's suggestion to have her help pick a wedding dress was an attempt to make her jealous. She asked him if he still loved her, but Maru immediately denied it. He couldn't reveal that Eunji was doing this to take revenge on him. When Eunji walked in and saw the two of them holding hands, she pretended not to notice. She was accompanied by Choco and Jae-gil. Choco immediately became uncomfortable seeing Jae-hee, and seizing the opportunity, Eungi asked why they knew each other. Jae-gil quickly covered Choco's mouth and explained that Jae-hee was Eunji's stepmother, and they had met a few times at Eunji's house. Maru understood that Eunji's question was aimed at exposing them all. Eunji continued to ask questions that put Jae-hee in a difficult position. The meal ended awkwardly, with everyone knowing the truth but pretending not to. Later, Eunji unexpectedly approached Lawyer Park and asked him if he liked her. This caught him off guard, and he asked if she had remembered everything. Eunji didn't answer, only smiled, which made him cry. Lawyer An, who was witnessing this, invited Eunji to his office for tea. He mentioned how Maru had taken advantage of her, preventing her from visiting her father one last time, and even brought up how Maru had allegedly killed someone. However, Lawyer An couldn't believe how calm Eungi remained, to the point of being unusually composed. She told him she didn't care about those things because she hadn't cared about them before, making Lawyer An fear that she had regained her memory. Eunji gave Lawyer An a sharp, silent look, subtly implying that her father's death was somehow linked to him and Jae-hee, causing him to clench his fists. The day of the wedding arrived, and Eunji looked radiant in her white dress, smiling beautifully, yet her heart was not at peace. Jae-hee carried a quiet sadness, while Lawyer Park held a sense of reluctance, unable to do anything differently. However, during the wedding, news about the relationship between Eungi's stepmother and her husband was leaked online. A photo of Jae-hee and Maru taken in the past was sent to a newsroom, which then published it, throwing the wedding into chaos. Despite this, Eungi patiently waited for Maru to arrive. As the wedding ended, and everyone had left, Maru still hadn't shown up. He was hiding far away, knowing this moment would come. Finally, when no one was left at the venue, Maru came to find Eunji. Without explaining anything, he simply draped a coat over her shoulders and led her outside to talk. At the same time, the butler revealed to Lawyer Park that it was Eunji who had leaked the photos to the press. Eunji wanted to take revenge on everyone, but Maru confronted her, saying he knew she was behind everything because she had regained her memories. He was angry though, and did not agree with with her method of revenge. If she wanted to get back at someone, it should be him and Jae-hee, not herself. Maru's family feared that Eunji's actions might lead her into even more trouble. Eunji no longer pretended. She told Maru that since her father had passed away, she had nothing left to fear. If she had to take revenge, she didn't mind shedding blood. As long as they were dead, she would do whatever it took. However, she offered Maru a chance to escape. After everything they had been through, she at least owed him that much. Maru was heartbroken, realizing that it was his actions that had turned Eungi into this vengeful person. He didn't know what to say anymore. Watching another man put his coat over her shoulders and walk her away left him in deep pain. Despite everything Eunji had done to him, Maru didn't hate her. He believed this was the punishment he had to endure for his mistakes. He couldn't let her face danger alone. Maru then met with Jae-hee and admitted that everything happening today was his fault, but he clarified that he had done it to ruin Jae-hee's career and take her down, intending to take her away. Jae-hee was taken aback by these words. Lawyer An, standing by, was furious and told Maru to leave, but in an ironic twist, it was Lawyer An who was shown the door. Jae-hee, in turmoil, questioned herself. Was Maru still in love with her? Meanwhile, Eungi was submerged in a bath, lost in her thoughts. Lawyer Park, deeply concerned, approached her. Eunji confessed that she wanted to hate Maru but found she couldn't. She believed that Maru had helped her out of pity, not love. What she didn't know was that Maru had sacrificed his own love for her. He had been willing to give everything up to protect her. He was ready to leave Jae-hee behind and disappear from Eunji's life, returning everything to her. But Eunji remained unaware of the depth of his feelings. Jae-hee, still thinking that Maru might truly return to her, warned him. Lawyer An is a terrifying figure, and he will not spare him. However, Maru gently stroked her hair and spoke comforting, affectionate words. Jae-hee, who had longed for happiness, had fallen into this trap. But from the very beginning, she understood Maru better than he understood himself. She realized that Maru's actions were all because of Eunji. Maru stopped lying and admitted everything. He then asked Jae-hee if he was with her for Eunji's sake. Would she be willing to let go of everything to hold on to him? Jae-hee hesitated for a moment, but still answered yes. Maru didn't respond. He waited for her to prove it through her actions. Eunji no longer lived with Maru. She moved in with Jae-hee, but in fact, she was living in her house. Jae-hee went to explain what happened the previous day, but Eunji said she didn't care. Jae-hee persisted, telling her that it was Maru who had leaked the news to the press. She thought Eunji had lost her memory, so she told her that she had once tried to stop Eungi from loving Maru, but she was still seduced by him. Jae-hee urged Eungi to stop clinging to Maru. Eunji was surprised to learn that Maru had taken the blame for her. Meanwhile, Jae-hee thought that the expression on Eunji's face was the shock of hearing about the rumors of Jae-hee's affair with her son-in-law, which led to her being urgently called for a meeting. Before that, Lawyer An had grabbed Jae-hee by the collar and threatened her, reminding her that she had used him before, asking him to help and protect her. He had helped Jae-hee achieve the high position she held today, so he wouldn't let her go back to Maru. This made Jae-hee fear the cold, indifferent look in his eyes. He even wanted to marry Jae-hee and forcefully kissed her. Jae-hee, filled with fear, went to Maru to drown her sorrows in alcohol. She expressed regret over pursuing power, only to now be threatened by it. Maru remained silent, listening to her. He knew that this was the karma Jae-hee had to face, and he too was about to face his own punishment of losing love. Jae-hee drank herself into a stupor, so Maru had to take her home. Eungi, who was at home, saw everything. The two of them didn't say a word to each other. Maru wanted to ask about Eunji's well-being, but she didn't speak to him. She went into her room, closed the door, and didn't want to see him. Maru called to remind her to eat well. Seeing her exhausted face, he truly felt heartbroken. Eunji still didn't answer, and her silence was tormenting Maru. Meanwhile, Jae-hee, feeling lonely, called the maid and asked if Maru was coming back or if he was still with Eunji. When the maid said that he was standing in front of Eunji's door, Jae-hee's heart ached terribly. The next day, Eunji went to Lawyer Park and asked if he knew anything about her father's death. Although he knew everything, he couldn't bring himself to say it because he feared Lawyer An would reveal that her father had staged the accident for her mother. If that happened, she would never want to see him again. But he couldn't continue lying to the one he loved the most. Lawyer Park couldn't tell Eunji the truth directly, so he turned to Maru to reveal it. After hearing the recording, both Jae-hee and Lawyer An stood by, watching Chairman Nam suffer a heart attack without offering any help. This caused Maru to feel fear. Lawyer Park explained that he hadn't shown Eunji the recording because he feared she would torment herself in her desire for revenge, steering her down the wrong path. Maru realized that the man in front of him loved Eungi just as much as he did. Lawyer Park handed over his resignation letter and the recording to Lawyer An, signaling his refusal to align with him any longer. Even if Lawyer An tried to use the fact that her father had killed his mother to threaten him, Lawyer Park no longer cared. He reminded Lawyer An that love shouldn't be forced. It was about choice. After listening to the recording, Maru deeply understood the fear of returning to the miserable life that Jae-hee had once lived. He suddenly went to her office, asking if she wanted to date him. Jae-hee arrived precisely on time. Now, she and Maru were no different, both pitiful in love. So if they didn't love each other truly, being together would at least relieve the burden on society. Maru took Jae-hee's cold hands in his. The coldness reminded him of the past. He lowered his head and blew warmth into her hands, then burst into tears. Jae-hee stared at at him in fear as he spoke, wondering if things would have been different if he had let her confess all those years ago and waited for her to return. He would save money to buy the luxury bags that Jae-hee liked, then take her and Choco on a trip, eating steak and drinking wine. Would that make her happy? Jae-hee could only cry in regret. Maru cried too, realizing that he had loved Jae-hee in the wrong way, taking the blame for her. He had turned Jae-hee into the person she was now. After saying this, he embraced Jae-hee and asked her if she wanted to return to him. Eun-gi saw everything. The next morning, Jae-hee's brother came to Maru's house. Knowing that it was Biguk's birthday, Choco had prepared a bowl of premium beef seaweed soup for him. Biguk was deeply moved. Compared to himself and those who only saw him as a tool to control, Choco and Maru treated him as a human being. Biguk told Maru that someone had agreed to give him an entire office building to kill him, but Maru was not afraid. Biguk's words indicated that he regretted not going through with it and that Maru wouldn't live much longer. Jae-gil overheard the conversation and angrily dragged Biguk outside, punching him. He then said that if Biguk didn't kill Maru, then Maru wouldn't last much longer anyway. He had a brain tumor. On the other hand, Lawyer Park, having been betrayed, was being harmed by the villains. When Maru arrived at the hospital, Eun-gi was already there. She sadly called out to Lawyer Park, trying to wake him up. Maru pulled her outside. Eun-gi believed that everything was related to Jae-hee and Lawyer An, but Maru scolded her for blaming them without evidence. He didn't tell her the truth because he feared she would seek revenge on them. However, the more Maru acted this way, the angrier Eun-gi became. She threatened that she would send those two to prison and told Maru to protect the one he couldn't forget, protect Jae-hee properly. At this moment, Jae-hee finally realized that what was best for her was not something she had to endure humiliation to obtain, but something simple and right in front of her. Jae-hee called Lawyer An to meet one last time. He had prepared the most expensive necklace for her, but when the door opened, it was Maru who walked in. He scolded Lawyer An, calling him an ungrateful, despicable man who would stop at nothing, even resorting to killing Chairman Nam, the man who had helped him in his career so he could take his position. Maru then revealed the recording of Lawyer An's crimes and told him that if he didn't turn himself in within 24 hours, he would hand the evidence over to the police. Jae-hee had overheard the entire conversation and was terrified. She realized that the only way she could start over with Maru was by turning herself in, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Jae-hee met with Lawyer An and asked him why he had to harm Lawyer Park. At this point, he wasn't regretful. He said he would take the blame for everything on behalf of Jae-hee, but Jae-hee refused. She wondered why she always had to push the responsibility onto someone else. Jae-hee felt like she was a sinner to society. The next day, she arranged to meet Maru at a place filled with memories of their past. She handed him a folder containing evidence that Chairman Nam had embezzled company funds and committed many wrongdoings to build the company. This document could destroy Eun-gi's company, but now Jae-hee was giving it to Maru in exchange for the recording of her and Lawyer An's crimes. Jae-hee told him that she wouldn't turn herself in unless Maru truly loved her, not just as a person, but with his heart fully returned to her. She gave Maru time to decide whether he should trust her and give her that trust in return. Maru went back to the hospital and sat next to Eun-gi, who had fallen asleep. He gently rested her head on his shoulder. When she woke up, he asked if she wanted to run away with him. He would go anywhere with her, as long as it was a place where no one could find them. Eun-gi felt his words were vague and wondered if something was wrong with him. She hesitated for a moment but pulled her hand away, stating that she didn't want to. She firmly declared that their relationship had ended a long time ago. Now, Eun-gi only wanted to find out the truth and seek justice for her father. With Lawyer Park in a coma, she had to uncover the mastermind behind this plot, not fall into the same reckless love with Maru as before. Before she left, Maru held her tightly in his arms and then made the painful choice to let her go. Maru went to meet Jae-hee and told her that he had already handed the recording over to the police. As for Eun-gi, he felt more at ease about her. When he learned that Jae-hee had evidence against Eun-gi, he had wanted to run away with her, but Eun-gi chose to face everything head-on. That was the Eun-gi Maru knew. So now he wanted Jae-hee to admit her guilt and start over, but Jae-hee knew that Maru no longer loved her. He told her he would wait for her, but it was just out of pity, so Jae-hee chose to die rather than turn herself in, even wanting Maru to die with her. However, no matter the past or present, Maru still wanted to live. He wasn't guilty of anything. Even without love, he would continue to live because he still had his loved ones. Maru's firm stance was meant to make Jae-hee understand the value of life. He wasn't going to die anytime soon. Just as he was leaving Jae-hee's room, a sharp pain in his head overwhelmed him. Shortly after, Jae-gil and Choco, their eyes red from crying, stood outside the room. It was at that moment that Choco finally learned about her brother's severe illness. Previously, when she was weak, Maru was the one who took care of her, but now, Choco felt helpless as she couldn't do anything for him. Inside, Maru was still smiling as he spoke to the doctor. The doctor informed him that he would need surgery the next day. Whether he woke up or became a vegetable, they had to try. Meanwhile, Jae-hee's brother rushed to tell her about Maru's condition. Jae-hee was terrified, her hands trembling uncontrollably. If Maru were no longer in this world, she would lose the most important person to her. She really wanted to visit him, but she ran into Eun-gi, who had just returned from outside. This time, Jae-hee was not selfish. She chose to give her love to Eun-gi. She told Eun-gi about Maru's condition so she could visit him. him. As for Jae-hee, she decided to stay home, knowing that she no longer deserved this love. Meanwhile, Eunji slowly made her way to the hospital. The accident she caused had led Ma-ru into this miserable state, and yet, he chose to endure all the pain and use his warm smile to heal the wounds he had caused her. He even refused to undergo surgery soon, just so he could be by her side. Eungi desperately wanted to knock on the door and hug him tightly, but she lacked the courage, so she left, wandering aimlessly on the street. In her confused state of mind, Eunji unknowingly caught the attention of someone, Lawyer An, who still harbored hatred and had not let go of his grudge. Sensing danger, Jae-hee called Eunji, but Eunji turned off her phone, leaving Jae-hee frightened and guilty. In the hospital, Jae-gil rushed in to ask Ma-ru where Eungi was. He had seen her arrive at the hospital earlier, and upon hearing this, Ma-ru became immediately worried. Ignoring his own condition, he rushed out to find Eunji. As he ran onto the main road, they came face to face with each other. Ma-ru hadn't even had time to breathe a sigh of relief when he saw Lawyer An approaching Eungi from behind. He immediately ran over and embraced her, taking the knife intended for her. Lawyer, and quietly walked away, while Eungi still had no idea what had just happened. Ma-ru didn't say anything, but silently held her tight. Despite being injured, he didn't want Eungi to worry, and he endured the pain to help her into the taxi on her way home. Eunji didn't know what to say. She could only give Ma-ru a kiss as a form of forgiveness. After the taxi drove off, Ma-ru's hands were drenched in blood. He tried to walk back home alone, but he collapsed, unable to continue. He believed this was the outcome he deserved for using Eungi and causing Jae-hee to lose her way. Meanwhile, Jae-hee had gone to the police station to confess. She admitted all the crimes she and Lawyer An had committed, clearing Ma-ru's name. 7 years passed. Choco and Jae-gil had become a family and had a beautiful, adorable daughter. Jae-hee's brother had opened a fried chicken shop and was working hard to make a living. Bae-guk had found the love of his life in his housekeeper. Jae-hee had been released from prison early, and when Lawyer An was finally released, she went to pick him up. However, Lawyer An saw Jae-hee sleeping and quietly watched her before leaving. It was a difficult decision for him, but the right one. Lawyer Park had recovered and had long forgiven Jae-hee. He and Eunji had taken care of Jae-hee's son during this time. As for Eunji, she gave up her company and opened a small cafe next to Ma-ru's clinic. It turned out that the surgery from years ago had caused him to forget the painful memories. He continued his medical studies and opened a clinic in this small town. Every day, Ma-ru would visit Eungi's cafe, and she quietly captured portraits of him. It was probably for the best that he lost his memories. They could start their love anew without any material struggles and with no one to stand in their way. They would be sincere and love each other as long as fate allowed. Dr. Ma-ru also liked the cafe owner, Eungi. On a romantic windy afternoon, he sat quietly beside her like a shy girl and then gave her a pair of rings he had always carried with him. From that moment, it seemed that the two of them would have a truly happy life together. And so, the movie came to an end. Thank you everyone for your attention and for following along. Goodbye and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.